Horror can be utilized in many different ways. Sometimes it's used to add intrigue to a mystery or a thriller. Sometimes it exists for its own sake, like in a slasher movie. But sometimes horror can be utilized to make a point. The best way to examine and view real-world problems is often to take them through a different lens. Taboo subjects like sex, psychology, and abuse can be easier to deal with when taken from a more outside, other context. Often in stories like these, the fantastic elements of the work are used to further the real goal, the real point, and even if interesting on their own, become even more fascinating when taken at their real symbolic value. Some of the best horror stories ever told are that way because of this extra depth. I would absolutely count a work like Higurashi among them. It takes a little while to actually get to the point. But the lesson that Higurashi teaches weaves in and out of its narrative until the two are so thoroughly entwined that it's next to impossible to separate them. Don't see it yet? If not, then after this chapter, you definitely will. It kind of hits you over the head for the slow people in the crowd. My name is Hedgehog, welcome back to this nonsense, and this is Higurashi. Minagoroshi Hen, or Massacre Chapter, is the moment in the story where everything finally comes together. All of the little bits of the mystery that have been floating around can be nearly assembled, and it's time to see what this puzzle actually looks like. Also, that title is ominous as fuck, but we'll deal with that later. Fittingly, this chapter is all about the single last, most mysterious main character. After 6 whole chapters of dancing around her, it's finally time to talk about Rika. Sure, you might have an inkling of a notion that she is aware of the time loops that are currently occurring, and that she has potentially experienced a lot of them, but never fear, Higurashi still has a couple more tricks up its sleeves. It's very wide. Shrine Maiden sleeves. As usual, before we begin, I have to subject you to Hedgehog's shilling corner. Yeah, I'm back in the editing chair for this one, but hey, with all of the amazing support I've been receiving from all these new fucking viewers, I'm getting so much closer to my goal of actually getting these out on a reasonable timescale and with much better editing. So if you'd be so kind as to check out my Patreon, that would be highly appreciated. On a much more fun note, since these do take just absolutely forever to get out, if you're looking for more fun mystery horror content to keep you going until the next one, I write audio dramas. They're available on my live streaming and other garbage channel, and Spotify, and my website. I have one of those. I recently just finished up a massive series titled Irie Valley, which is, just like Higurashi, a small-town mystery story. Kind of. At first. It's weird. We don't talk about the interdimensional demon city. Most importantly, however, as always, I've got to thank my voice actors and everyone else who contributed to this episode. This really is a group project that I get all the credit for, so please be sure to also shout out your favorite performance from the series so far in the comments. They are all so talented. Give them validation. They don't listen to me. Also, special thanks to Bunny for taking on the role of Rika on such short notice. She absolutely nailed it, and we wish Snazzy Sloth the best in Europe. Also, feel free to get in touch with any of us at our links or on the Discord server. They are all very friendly. I promise they won't scare you. Guys, play it fucking cool. Alright, to everyone that just skipped over that entire section, you should feel ashamed of yourselves. Welcome back, and let's get into it. Can you feel it, everyone? I think it might be the moment of truth. It's time for one last build-up, straight to the climax. With any luck, we'll finally be able to shatter this horrible fate that has befallen us. It begins, as always, with a note from the author. This story introduces the unit inside and out, using all the actors. This is no longer a story. It's a public autopsy for all to join. As they say, after loving someone, cut open their belly and eat their organs. It's the same with stories. The difficulty is quite mild. Well suited for those with pride.
What are you doing? I don't see you playing by yourself that often. All you could do before was nod to my questions. Since when do you have your own will?
We find ourselves in some sort of void, I guess? Only one other person is here with us, it seems. A strange voice. Maybe they can tell us what the hell's going on.
This is an endless, eternal, and infinite world. I suppose you could describe it like a ring with a small diameter. While the ring is an eternal, endlessly looping world, that doesn't mean it contains infinite space. The future is supposed to be an infinite weave of countless choices. Yet for whatever reason, our world always ends in death.
Okay, cool. That was less than helpful. From what we can gather, it seems we find ourselves in some sort of space between the timelines with some sort of version of Rika. Okay, we're really just going for it then. This Rika seems to be one that lost interest in the worlds, although she still helps us to see some of the intricacies in the world fragments that remain. There are only 6 of them left. The previous chapters, of course.
All of that is the life of Rika Furude and its end.
She speaks to us, both as the viewers and as some hypothetical version of Rika, and answers a few of our questions, in a very convoluted way. When asked why different events occur in different world lines, Rika explains that events are caused by will. The more willpower someone has, the more likely it is that that event will keep repeating.
In other words, what Keiichi Maebara did in Onikakushi was not inevitable. If Keiichi Maebara was someone with a naturally suspicious heart, he would take the same actions in every world. But that didn't happen. When you compare the different worlds, what's common among all of them is the truth.
But this brings up a point, one that we've been wondering about and have probably been seeing the common thread of for a long time. Even if it's not Keiichi, in every world, someone goes insane and commits horrendous deeds. Keiichi in the 1st and 3rd chapters, Shion in the 2nd and 5th, and Rena in the 6th. But what's important isn't what they did. All their crimes are entirely different and unrelated. What's important is that someone always does go insane.
The rule that a random person becomes violent under the influence of paranoid thoughts. This is Rule X.
This is one of the many little rules, little inevitabilities woven into the fabric of Hinamizawa itself. There are a couple of important ones, things that occur in every timeline possible.
Some events quickly come to mind, don't they?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is the murder of Takano and Tomitake, of course. Not only are they killed in every world, but they die in the exact same way as well. Tomitake claws at his throat, and Takano burns to death in an oil drum. This, Rika declares, is Rule Y. More importantly, Rule Y is often the indirect cause of Rule X. It almost feels as if there's someone leading the victims of Rule X to this conclusion. And guess what? We already have 2 suspects. In fact, I spoke about them rather at length last chapter. That's right, I'm talking about Oishi the police officer and Takano herself. Like I said last chapter, we already know Oishi's motivations here. He, at the very least, is not purposefully trying to propagate Rule X, but his shenanigans certainly don't ever help the situation. Takano is a little more complicated. Simply put, she messes with the scenario just as much as Oishi does, but unlike him, we don't know if she's doing it purposefully or not.
She interfered the most with Rena Ryuugu. For Miyo Takano, Rena Ryuugu was the perfect prey, grasping at straws to try and identify the force she suspected.
This leads us to the final important rule. Both Oishi and Takano usually lead the main cast to suspect the Sonozaki family. This happens in every timeline. This is Rule Z. But Rule Z is funny, in a way, because of how misleading it is.
The fact is that the Sonozaki family always acts as if they are responsible, no matter if they are or not. They always pretend to be the villains in order to make sure that people continue to fear them.
So, in short, the idea that the murders of the past 5 years are all connected, or serial, as Rika puts it, might all be a misconception brought about by Rule Z. Maybe. This brings Rika to a thought. Remember Shion's curse theory from back in Chapter 5?
Her theory is that the suspect is not the one who's committing the crime. It's the environment that's causing the murder.
The town itself of Hinamizawa, and the belief that you are allowed to kill one person on the night of Watanagashi in honor of Oyashiro-sama is perhaps what is causing the murders, thusly rendering neither Keiichi, Shion, or Rena as Rule X, but rather Hinamizawa itself. An interesting theory. We'll see if it holds water. Man, I love it when the game does my analysis for me! Yet despite these rules and all the variations they cause, there's still one problem that Rika faces.
The fact that Rika Furude dies each time. It's as if June 1983 is a dead end for her.
Her death is just as set in stone as Tomitake's and Takano's, it seems. And that's where the problem lies.
Rika's most important goal is to escape her deadly fate. But it doesn't mean that she just wants to leave the village and survive. She wants to live happily in the village. All of her friends must also be happy too. That's Rika's happy future, the ideal future she hopes for.
That's a tall order, considering that there are so many things, rules X, Y, and Z, that all stand in her way. However, it seems like there may be some hope. In just the last chapter we experienced, Keiichi remembered a previous timeline, and that helped him destroy Rule X in that world.
In the end, Rika was still killed that night by Rule Y, though. But still, one rule was defeated. That was a huge leap forward.
However, at this point in our tale, Rika has traveled through many, many worlds. She's well over 100 years old now, and her mental lifespan is rapidly decreasing.
In the end, she'll probably lose the ability to experience singular worlds, and eventually her memories from the parallel worlds will mix together, ultimately causing her derangement. Hanyu is also losing her powers. She can't rewind through years of time like she used to. Her power has decreased so much that she can barely rewind 1 month of time.
Wait, who's Hanyu? We've never heard that name before. Whatever, it doesn't matter. This time around, Rika's only going to have about 2 weeks to break all 3 rules. This chapter is all about seeing if she will succeed.
I felt no gravity in the darkness, and lost all my senses as a result. I banged my head on the floor with a dull thud. Seeing stars behind my eyelids, I curled into a ball while holding my head in pain.
Rika's friends run up to her, expressing their concern, but the reason she's so out of it isn't because she's in pain. It's because for her, this is an entirely new world.
Ow! Ow, ow, ow!
Hanyu? Ouch. What just happened?
Ow, ow! You were playing with everyone and fell off the cliff. Are you okay?
I don't care about that, Hanyu. What day is it today?
Okay, hold on. Who the hell is this? And why is she just adorable? This is the aforementioned Hanyu. She is the facilitator of all these timelines that Rika has experienced, and only she can see her, as she always has. Hanyu is, of course, the entity that Rika was seen talking to briefly last chapter. I'm so glad I could finally actually properly credit Keiichi Cat. Yay. Right now, Rika has been brought back again to the beginning of June 1983. Hanyu used to be able to wind back much more time, but her powers are fading. Rika is running out of time to save herself. Worst of all, she can't remember how she died. She never can.
Hello? Rika-chan, are you okay? Did you sprain your ankle?
Where did you get hurt? Let this old man have a look at it. Though Rika insists that she's fine, the others elect to call Irie to get her looked at. Mion and Rena take off to call him and get a wet towel respectively, and Satoko, Keiichi, and of course Hanyu stay behind.
I'm glad you're not seriously injured. I was super worried.
Rika used to see Keiichi as a well-meaning but kind of silly guy, but now she realizes that he has a secret side. He is caring to a fault and more than willing to sacrifice himself for other people. You know, that kinda makes me look like an asshole for poking at him so much all this time. Which was, you know, the joke, in case that wasn't clear. Regardless, what led him to be so successful in the last world was that he remembered a previous timeline. Hanyu sees what she's thinking and doesn't look happy. She thinks that a miracle like that won't happen again and doesn't want Rika to get her hopes up. But Rika persists anyway.
Keiichi, do you remember?
Huh? What are you talking about?
He doesn't remember. Of course he doesn't. It took a lot for him to remember last time.
If miracles could happen that easily, neither of us would be suffering like this.
But even if Keiichi can't be her knight in shining armor, he still taught her something important. That she can't give up. That all she can do to change her fate is fight.
Keiichi taught me that fate can be shattered. I'm going to fight one more time.
There, you're all done.
Dr. Irie is good with needles. Unlike me, you didn't even notice he was finished.
Satoko and Rika are in the clinic, where Irie is in the process of examining Satoko. Now that she's done with her shot, Takano takes her to a different room to take a quiz. Wait, why is it Satoko that's getting shots?
I don't know if it's because of the heat, but Satoko has been showing negative symptoms since last month.
Hold on. Is Satoko sick? With what? What is going on? Hanyu goes off to take the quiz with Satoko, and Rika has a chance to talk to Irie. Apparently, it really must have been the heat, as Satoko is improving again. Though when Rika asks Irie how she is...
She's in remission, but her level is still L3 negative. She was and will continue to be in critical condition.
She's never, ever going to get better?
So even if she isn't actively showing symptoms to us, it is clear that Satoko is suffering from some sort of chronic illness. Initially, what with the shots and all, you might be thinking diabetes, but that's not it. There's actually a pretty obvious answer if you're willing to believe in some conspiracy theories, especially when you consider that the test Takano seems to be giving her is largely psychology-based. What with the ink blots and all, it appears that this condition is somewhat mental. Hey, you don't happen to remember any sort of disease we may have previously discussed that has a significant mental component? And you thought Rena was talking out of her ass. Anyway, Satoko finishes her test, and Irie gives her some instructions about a medication she needs to take.
Yeah, same as usual. I know.
She's a little impatient to get out of there as they have a club activity to attend. The two girls give the clinic staff a fond farewell and head off to Okinomiya, where they're meeting the gang at the toy shop.
My goodness. I'm used to these tests and quizzes, but they always leave me exhausted.
Satoko is supporting Irie's research. She gets financial support by helping him out. Or at least, that's what Satoko thinks she's doing.
Okay, hold on. First of all, Satoko apparently doesn't know she's sick at all, which explains her sort of laissez-faire attitude at the clinic. And second, whatever it is she has is something that is actively being researched at the Irie clinic, which finally explains why the facilities are so extreme for such a small town. The clinic is a cover for whatever the fuck it is they're actually researching there. I mean, we kind of figured, but good to know. But Rika already knows about all of this. She's been helping them out too, after all, so she doesn't think about it too much. I wish she'd think about it more. The two girls meet the rest of the club members in front of the toy store, and we proceed to experience the same scenario that we did in Chapter 2. Satoko and Keiichi gush about the prize that Mion's offering for winning the activity today. But Rika messes up. She already knows about the prize, of course, but Satoko was expecting her to act surprised. When she doesn't really respond, Satoko turns to Keiichi and talks to him about it instead. No big deal. But to Rika, it is.
I am losing my ability to be surprised by life. Eventually, I'll lose my emotions entirely. That's why I'm always trying to be careful. I make sure to act like the Rika Furude who doesn't know anything. But the more and more I try, the more I feel like Rika Furude is someone very distant.
Hanyu expresses concern, and Rika explains to us that as she begins to lose her joy, her emotions, she will eventually become nothing more than a doll. And that is when her life will end. The more she experiences pain, frustration, the more quickly she will lose hope.
It's been at least 100 years, if not more. I've been stuck in this living hell for so long. I don't want my life to end here.
She apologizes to Hanyu, and thinks she must find it funny that Rika is complaining after such a short amount of time.
Hello. I've grown used to this fate by now.
Despite her absolute adorableness, you get the feeling that Hanyu is actually an incredibly sad person. They tune back into the conversation, and the game proceeds as it always has in the past. Mion explains the rules to the assembled group of kids, breaking them into groups to play a game. Of course, as always, she's rigged it so that the club members all end up in different groups. Rika usually enjoys the club activities, because Mion often decides what they do on a whim, meaning she doesn't have a very strong will, so what they do always changes. But when this event happens, it's usually because Mion has spent several days planning it, so it usually happens in the exact same way. I really love the mechanics of the time looping. They are definitely super well thought out, and enough is explained to us that we can get a general sense of how they work, but not so well that it feels cheap when those established rules start getting broken, like Keiichi remembering past timelines, for example. Anyway, Rika desperately hopes that Mion will change the rules of the game just to show her that fate can be malleable. Hanyu tells her not to get her hopes up because it will hurt her when nothing changes, and she's not wrong.
Sorry. I was holding on to a small hope.
Small hopes will hurt you, Rika.
You're right. You've told me so many times, but I never learn.
In order to hurt the least, Rika has to flow with the current of fate. This costs her the least amount of effort. But if she simply goes with the flow, how can she expect to break through fate?
What's wrong, Rika-chan? Are you bored?
This is something that's never happened in this event. As always, it is Keiichi that takes the first steps towards breaking apart fate. Rika figures he won't understand her, but she tells him her feelings anyway.
I was just thinking that I've already done this before.
Keiichi thinks she means that they've already done this tournament in the past, before he moved here. He doesn't understand her. They talk briefly about things they can't change, that make them upset, like a teacher's lecture, but as always, Keiichi has some words of wisdom. The fucking weirdo.
But this is a different story. It's a game.
It's a game, but it's already predetermined.
You don't know that. There's no way to predict what games we'll do battle over, or what exciting turnabouts await us today.
Objection!
But of course, Rika does. And she explains it to him in exhaustive detail. She's going to play the fishing game, and Keiichi is going to play the game of life. Keiichi is surprised by her predictions.
That's what fate is all about.
Fate, huh? That makes me want to smash that fate into pieces.
I sometimes wonder if, when making fun of Keiichi, I am actually making fun of myself. Rika continues to feel depressed as one by one, all of her predictions come true. They get divided the exact way she thought, mostly because Mion's rigged it, meaning there's actually no random chance at all, and her group quickly picks the fishing game. This nearly causes Rika to lose her mind a little bit, and it's clear that she's really not in a great place. Meanwhile, Keiichi is surprised that so far Rika's predictions have all come true. He'll really believe her if the shop owner brings the game of life to his table, which of course he does.
I had hope for him. I thought the owner might bring a different game because Keiichi once had the power to change fate. But that didn't happen. I'm not surprised, but I felt betrayed again.
And yet, this is Keiichi we're talking about here.
You said it was fate that the owner would choose the game of life. But you also said something else.
What did I say?
You said I was fated to play it.
And with that, he simply tells his group that he has played this game a lot, so they should pick a different one. It's such a small act. Such a small fate that has been altered. But Keiichi has that power. He did it so easily.
So I'm a witch who'd been living for more than 100 years. So I thought I was better than everyone. Just because I can see the paths of fate? That's stupid. I really am so stupid.
Just this little thing is starting Rika back on the path of waking up. So Rika too goes back to her table and tells them she wants to play a different game.
I feel bad for the fishies when I play the fishing game. I want to play something else.
And so they do.
That's right. I used to be much more aggressive before, but I became so tired and bitter and mean. I gave in to fate. But I'm not going to yield anymore. Keiichi taught me that.
So, the stage is set. It's time for one more battle. Perhaps what may be the final one. Rika remembers now how easy it is to change fate, because if you recall, this event leads directly to Shion's insanity. Yet that problem could have been so easily rectified. All Keiichi has to do is give Mion the doll. So Rika pokes him, and almost as if he himself knows it already, he gives his prize to Mion. This old man thinks that cute dolls like this are more for girly girls, you know? This doll doesn't deserve to be owned by a tomboy like me.
I know you want it. It's written all over your face.
No, it's not written on my face. You're lying. Stop being mean. I want the world for these two. I want them to fall in love and go on dates and...
Everyone had lots of fun, and no one was hurt. I've repeated this day so many times before, but this time, something was different. It's like I rolled a die and got a 6, and then I rolled it again, and I got a 6 again. It's as if the god of fate is celebrating my motivation to fight against him.
Rika's scenario is much more fantastical in nature than Rena's in the last chapter, but they share a lot of similarities. Both characters suffer from a feeling of helplessness, a loss of control in their lives. With Rika, it just happens to be that she's stuck in an infinite time loop that always ends in her death and is slowly being driven insane by the repetition, which is just what depression feels like! Of course, Rena and Rika react entirely differently to this loss of power. Rena lashes out, acting on her own and making poor decisions which will only succeed in destroying her own life. Rika, on the other hand, shuts down entirely. She becomes apathetic and listless. She feels helpless, and it makes her bitter and mean. She is cynical and does a lot of bemoaning about her situation, but feels unable to actually do anything about it. Just like Rena, the solution is very obvious, and both solutions are represented in the personage of Keiichi, or as I like to call him, knockoff anime Jesus. Keiichi represents the external, the outside, those people you can connect with, can talk to, that can get you out of your own head. A problem that Rika considered a mountain, Keiichi shows her is actually a molehill. And he did it so easily. Of course, destroying all those pesky rules that we talked about earlier is going to be much more difficult than changing the specific game played on one specific afternoon. But with the help of her friends, hopefully Rika can rise to the occasion and meet the challenge head on. We hope. We are now back in Keiichi's head. We just can never get away from the little scamp, can we? The next day at school, Mion tells Keiichi that at the previous night's Watanagashi meeting, she brought up his name when it was mentioned that they still need someone to run the newly minted auction, and everyone there agreed that he would be a perfect fit. Keiichi isn't too sure he's capable of such a feat, but come on, if there's one thing we all know that Keiichi can do, it's talk.
Alright, Kei-chan, if you want some kind of compensation, we can talk about it. I really want you to be a part of this. We can make a deal.
We're always talking about punishments, but it's our first time talking about a reward.
Finally, after she promises to get him 3 years' worth of admission to the Angel Moore dessert festas, he agrees.
Fine. As a man, I'm going to do it. Wait and see, I'll make it the greatest auction in the world.
I don't quite know what that has to do with being a man, but you go for it, Keiichi. And then everybody clapped. No, they literally do. That's not a joke. After that whole discussion ends, Mion remembers that her grandma made ohage recently and told her to bring some to share with her classmates. Apparently, the reason Oryou is so good at making ohage is because they were some of her husband's favorites, which is pretty adorable.
You think so? I thought Gramps liked canned food.
You don't like canned food, do you, Shion?
Oh, is that so? After always forcing me to eat my squash, it turns out that you too have something you can't eat.
Oh yeah, by the way, Shion is just here now, and she's been making Satoko eat her squash, just like in the hypothetical world we saw at the end of Chapter 5. Huh. Anyway, back to the ohage. Keiichi finds himself a little concerned that there might be something in them, knowing Miyo, and she probably put hot sauce in them or something.
What's going on? I felt like I was forgetting something. I'd never been in this situation, but my mind was telling me I'd been there before.
What's wrong, Keiichi?
Keiichi expresses confusion at his own deja vu because he has never eaten Miyo's ohage. Right?
I wouldn't feel this way if Rena brought me ohage. They're small, but very carefully made.
But he's never had Rena's ohage either. Yet, try as he might, even as he stares at Mion's ohage, he really can't remember.
Keiichi, you can't have memories of what didn't happen. If you remember something, I'm sure it really happened before.
She pushes him gently, and after a second, as if recalling a dream, Keiichi once again remembers Chapter 1 and the ohage filled with hot sauce. The ohage that he was sure contained a needle. Even now, he stares at the ohage on his desk, and Mion thinks that he just doesn't like them, but Keiichi berates himself a little and takes a big bite.
The next moment, I got the urge to say something to Mion. It wasn't the right thing to say, but I just felt like I had to say it. Hey, Mion? The ohage was delicious.
Huh? I'm glad I brought them then, even though they were really heavy.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
Well then, since Kei-chan overcame his fears and ate the ohage, you should eat this squash, Satoko-chan.
How can that lunchbox always be so full of squash? You're going to give me a traumatic experience.
Their lunch returns to its normal, pleasant mood, but Rika approaches Keiichi and tells him something very important.
If you see a needle inside your food, it's definitely some kind of mistake. Please don't ever believe that it's me's fault.
He promises her he won't. Later on, the gang heads to the shrine in order to look over the stuff that's been donated for the auction. Most of the stuff is old product from Sonozaki businesses, and Rena seems pretty interested in them. When asked if she's thinking of living on her own, Rena has a surprising answer.
Oh, no. My dad and I were just talking about redecorating the house. Brand new furniture is expensive, so I've been checking out these recycled ones. My dad finally found a job recently.
He did?
Rika is just as surprised as I am. And cool as a cucumber, something that she had so much trouble doing last chapter, Rena simply explains what her home situation is like. In this timeline, Rena also found out about Rena.
That's why I had a talk with him. We talked about his responsibility as the head of the household and as a parent.
What led to this conversation? Well, apparently Rena was feeling pretty down about the whole thing, so she simply talked to Mion about it. All I did was listen to her. Rena was the one who faced her problems and came to the conclusion of talking with her dad about them.
Before I spoke to Michan, all I thought about was how to hurt that lady. But I realized that wasn't a good solution at all. It really was perfect timing. He was getting ready to pay the down payment for this lady's apartment.
Okay, so that's 2 horrible outcomes that have so far been averted, but this one Rika didn't even help out with? So why did Rena change what she did? Apparently, she had a dream.
In my dream, I saw that lady living with us in our home. Eventually, I felt like I didn't belong there anymore. Then something urged me to kill her.
Everyone is glad that at the end of the day it was just a silly dream. Yikes. That seems to remind Shion of something as well, and Keiichi explains to us that she's been coming to the school in Hinamizawa lately specifically to take care of Satoko. He might not know this, but I think that Shion also remembered her promise to Satoshi. I think she's trying to make good on that promise instead of getting revenge. Wow. Is this truly the best timeline? Because now it's not just Keiichi who's getting flashes from his previous lives, it's everyone. Everyone is learning from their past mistakes. Someone enters the room, interrupting their little powwow. They all help her move another donation, a huge cupboard, into the room, and even this random woman says she's looking forward to Keiichi's auction.
I caused so much trouble where I lived before that I couldn't even go outside. But they're accepting me as a member of the village? I felt bad I still hadn't learned all of their names, but I was going to do my best to entertain the villagers who were supporting me.
It's getting late now, and the gang decides that it's about time to head home. They all decide to go to the Watanagashi together. How many of us are going to be there at the festival? It's going to be a battle of the 6 evils.
Rena, Mion, Shion, Satoko, Rika-chan, and I. The 6 of us will definitely have a great time there. I've never been this excited about a festival in my life.
Not everything is all sunshine and rainbows, however. Well, okay, it is for Keiichi, the little slime ball, but meanwhile, Rika still has to figure out how in the world she can save her own life. Late in the evening, after Satoko has fallen asleep, Rika stares up at the moon.
Rika, you seem to be in a good mood.
Yes, I think I am.
Rika thinks this is the perfect time for a little drinky drink, which Hanyu hates because anything that Rika eats, Hanyu can taste as well. She starts jumping up and down on the floor and nearly wakes Satoko.
Rika, would you stop jumping around?
See, she was bothered by you jumping around like that, you nighttime nuisance.
Rika explains that even though people can't usually see her, Hanyu does still exist, so sometimes, especially people who are in a critical condition like Satoko, can hear her when she does certain things. Like, maybe jumping up and down on some floorboards, or, walking right behind someone. Just some hypothetical examples. Yeah, bet you never thought the horrifying presence following our main cast this entire time was this fucking sponge of a girl. Anyway, Rika and Hanyu compromise that Rika will drink her cocktail with plenty of juice to dilute the wine, and holy shit, I want to make those. Would that be like a really simple mimosa? Hold on, I'll be right back.
Hey, Hanyu, do you feel that something is different this time?
Are you talking about Keiichi and Rena?
I know I often use board games as examples of fate, but I feel like this is the same lucky chance as rolling all 6s on 3 dice.
I think that's a good way to describe it in the sense that we're starting closest to your desired future. But I don't think this is the miracle that you've been waiting for.
Of course, it's not a true miracle yet, and Hanyu is telling her to not get her hopes up. But nothing can destroy Rika's good mood tonight. For once, she's got a favorable start. Yet, there's one problem with this thought. What if she still fails? What if, despite this headwind, she still can't defeat her fate?
If I couldn't change my fate in this world, then it was proof that I couldn't change it in any world.
There's a reason Hanyu is trying to temper her expectations, of course. Because even if Rika dies, Hanyu will still be here. All alone. And so Rika begins to ponder once again just who is trying to kill her so badly. Since it happens in every single timeline imaginable, it must be someone with an incredibly strong will to do it, which means they have a motive.
Hanyu suggests that Rika should go to Irie and the clinic, but why them in specifics?
They realize how special I am, and they would try to make sure that nothing happens to me. If I confess to them that my life is in danger, I'm sure they would do their best to prevent it.
So, why didn't she try this incredibly obvious answer before? Because it never worked in the past. Tomitake and Takano get killed before Rika does, and Irie, though very smart, apparently doesn't have all that much power in this situation. Rika has tried in the past to prevent T-Squared from their unfortunate fates, but it's never worked. They never believe her when she tells them they're in danger. Also, there's the fact that the clinic has been using Rika as a guinea pig. For some reason, that makes her resent Irie. Still, he might be her last hope. Usually once the others die, Irie panics and becomes useless, which is why she hasn't relied on him in the past either. Though Rika resents having to rely on these people that she doesn't necessarily like all that much, she might have to suck it up and try.
If I can change the fate of their deaths, they should be able to save me from my own.
Because the person who wants to kill her clearly has to dispose of Takano and Tomitake first, considering they also always die.
Thinking from that point of view, my destiny becomes inescapable the moment I abandon them to die.
You should know what you have to do first, then.
Yes, I have to think about saving their lives before thinking about mine.
Okay, so now we have a plan of action. There's just one thing still bugging her. Who in the fuck actually wants Rika dead? I mean, look at her, she's goddamn adorable. Beyond that, though, apparently there's more. Rika goes on like we should already know what she's talking about, but it seems like her death could potentially lead to something really bad. She goes through a couple of different options, but none of them really seem to fit. One more thought crosses her mind before she decides to turn in for the night. Rika solved their problem by talking to a friend. Maybe after talking to Takano and Irie, she should talk to Keiichi too. The next day, Rika goes to the clinic, but Irie is busy, and Takano and Tomitake are on a date. So Rika wanders back to the shrine, and lo and behold, she sees two unfamiliar mountain bikes. She looks around the shrine grounds for them, but finally realizes exactly where they are.
How is it? Jirou-san?
It's a pretty simple lock. All I need is the right tool. I should be able to open it in a minute.
They're trying to break into the ritual storehouse. In the past, Rika has tried to keep Takano away from the storehouse as she's afraid she'll spread misinformation about Hinamizawa's past, and also it makes Hanyu sad to see her in there. But she realizes that she can use this to her advantage. If she lets Takano go inside, maybe she'll be less reluctant to help her.
You mean this storehouse? Inside of this building?
I'm not trying to trick you or anything. I'll let you inside. Nipa!
After waiting a solid minute for Takano to calm the fuck down, Rika grabs the keys and the three head inside. But she makes Takano pay her 10,000 yen to take pictures. This seems to satiate Hanyu for the moment, as she can use that money to buy sweets.
I finally got approval from Oyashiro-sama, the master of the storehouse. We'd have no more problems now.
As they head inside, Takano reacts as she always does, with awe, while Tomitake's reaction is less than enthusiastic.
I wonder why they made so many torture implements. The whole purpose of torture is to make people confess something, right? Why was it necessary for them to have so many?
Jirou-san, do you know that there are 2 ways to threaten people with torture implements? The first one is to inflict pain on the victim. The other way is to threaten the victim by just showing him the tools.
Wow, Takano. Sounds like you've really thought about this, huh? But she's not wrong. A lot of these tools don't even function correctly, though some of them definitely do. Takano goes on a little rant about her almost fetishistic love of torture implements, going on a big tangent about the invention of the guillotine before she turns her attention to the statue of Oyashiro-sama at the back of the room.
Gods are born because people desire them. So when people seek to rule others with fear, they become the collection of blood, torture, and pure terror. And here they call that god Oyashiro-sama! In other words, this proves that the stairs to godhood are built not by gods, but by human hands, and shows the way for us humans to attain further heights, and...
But she's interrupted by a loud noise. A noise we should all be very familiar with. Someone is jumping on the floorboards. It's Hanyu. She's crying.
That's not right! I'm not like that! I hate seeing people getting tortured or killed! I want people to be happy together!
Even if Takano can't hear her, Tomitake can. He tells her to be quiet, but of course she hasn't heard anything. Rika admonishes Takano a bit on Hanyu's behalf, and Takano apologizes. And now that everyone's friends again, this feels like the time to bring up what she really wanted to all this time. They haven't believed her in the past, but maybe, just maybe, Rika will roll another 6, and a miracle will occur. We don't immediately get to hear how that goes, however, as we're whisked away to someplace a little odd. Irie is in a meeting room, having just finished giving a presentation to 8 men in lab coats. They applaud his progress and hard work, and he is especially praised by one certain cheeky little individual.
We really are getting close to finding a perfect cure. There are a few more sticking points left, but they can all be resolved with time and financing.
Hey friend. Wildlife photographer, huh? Wildlife photographer in a military uniform. Who knows about this secret what's-it that Irie is trying to cure? The one that increasingly is justifying a lot of Rena's conspiracies in the previous chapter.
We're counting on your support on that front. With sufficient funding and labor, I estimate we'll be done within 3 years. By 1986, we should be able to establish a complete treatment for it.
With regards to testing, Dr. Irie is currently researching ways to detect potential patients through blood samples.
And of course Takano's involved too, because how could a mere nurse have access to so many blood samples? As the conversation goes on, it becomes clear that Tomitake's role here is to act as mediator between the clinic and whoever is funding them. He seems to have his sympathies for the team, but he's ultimately the one who gets chewed out if things aren't looking kosher. The meeting breaks up, but Irie, Takano, and Tomitake stick around to clean up afterwards. Eventually, Tomitake asks about Satoko, who is, of course, their primary guinea pig. Irie is able to tell him the good news that her negative test results were just a fluke. Tomitake expresses a desire to cure her entirely, but Irie explains that that might not be possible.
Once a patient reaches the L5 state like Satoko-chan has, it's easy for them to re-experience hallucinations, similar to a patient suffering from flashbacks.
Okay. So if that wasn't confirmation that the illness that they're studying, the one that Satoko has, is in some way the curse of Oyashiro-sama, I don't know what is. They move on to talking about Rika, and all 3 of the adults express a desire to pay the 2 back somehow for all the help they provided, even if on Satoko's end it was largely without her knowledge. But that reminds Tomitake of something.
What do you think of what Rika-chan told us near the end today?
What are you talking about?
Rika-chan asked us for something today. She wanted our protection because she feels like someone is going to murder her.
The adults laugh this idea off. Don't be ridiculous. Who'd want to murder Rika? But they do worry that this may be a sign of her reaching the L5 stage. Ooh, that sounds so dramatic. But Takano counters that they should be showing their support for Rika after the favor she did them today.
Takano-san, please do what you can to keep her safe.
All right. I'll order at least 4 members of the Mountain Dogs to watch her 24 hours a day.
Okay. So, there's a lot to unpack about this scene, and for once we're gonna do it right now. Sorry, John, I don't need you this time. So let's break it down. First, we learn that Tomitake is much more involved with the, for lack of a better word, conspiracy in Hinamizawa than we previously thought. This finally gives us a reason why he is the first victim of the 5th year's curse. Of course, this could still be another one of Higurashi's famous red herrings, but I think this late in the game, it's safe to say that his death has some sort of a motive behind it. This immediately puts suspicion on either Irie as the head of the clinic, or Takano, who despite being just a nurse, seems to have a lot more power in this situation than we previously assumed as well. From this conversation, we can tell there have been a lot of arguments about the budget, though we don't yet know the specifics. Second, Takano. We're finally starting to see her role here. She doesn't seem to be in charge of the conspiracy, but now knowing that she does at least know some things, all of her notebooks filled with gobbledygook makes a lot more sense. It's designed to obscure the real truth of what's actually going on behind a bunch of red herrings. Also, she probably is just still a freak, let's be honest. Also, she seems to be in charge of security around the research, as it's clear that she is the one in charge of a group called the Mountain Dogs, though we don't exactly know what they actually are yet. Third, just like we initially suspected, Irie is in charge of researching some sort of disease that definitely seems like a decent candidate as the true culprit behind the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Alright, that was a lot. That was a lot for Higurashi to just drop in one scene. It's like we've been sipping through a hole we stabbed in the lid of a water bottle with a pencil, and Ryukishi just came along and told us that we're being stupid for not just opening the top, even though he's the one that handed us the pencil in the first place. That was such a weird analogy. What am I doing with my life? Existential crises aside, the club decides to head back to the toy store that afternoon, as Keiichi has noticed that there were no toys among the donations for the auction, which is actually quite smart. Keiichi would make a good salesman. The only reason they're able to bully the toy store owner into donating something is, of course, because they have the power of Oryou Sonozaki behind them, at least nominally. So they fuck around for a while, looking at all the potential things they could snatch, sticking papers in anything that catches their eyes. Eventually, they wander over to the tables that are always at the back of any game store worth its salt. Trust me, guys, I work at one. I have very specific opinions on this. And there they notice that a mahjong set has been set up there and seemingly abandoned. All the club members express their knowledge, which surprises Keiichi.
Mion, listen here. You had 4 young girls together and you played mahjong at school?
Hey, Kei-chan, you can't underestimate this game. Hinamizawa gets a lot of snow in the winter. The whole village enjoys mahjong in those months.
I see. So Hinamizawa is really just Japanese Minnesota. No wonder it feels so oddly familiar. Upon asking the owner, apparently someone was at the store earlier who was using the set to practice the Tsubame Gaeshi. I'm not super qualified to talk about it, so let's have the resident nerd explain it instead.
That's the greatest scam in the history of mahjong. It's the ultimate technique, developed in ancient China.
Keiichi, that means nothing to me.
It's a bold technique where you switch your hand with the wall in a flash. Nipa!
Thank you, Rika. Basically, it's a method of cheating, but one that requires a lot of practice and a good grasp on how to do sleight of hand. So what this is telling me is that I should never, ever get Dragon involved when I finally decide to learn how to play mahjong. The gang spends a hot minute trying to pull the move off. Satoko gets the closest, being the trap master and all, but her hands are still a little small and the whole wall comes crashing down.
I can't do it. It's not that easy, you know.
The club almost turns it into an activity to see who can pull it off first, but before they get into the full swing of it, they're interrupted.
Oh, what's going on in here?
Oishi? What are you doing here? The shit hasn't even happened yet. Yeah, in case you haven't noticed, up until this point, Oishi very rarely shows up in the plot anytime before Watanagashi, the only real exception being in Chapter 5, which largely takes place in the previous year.
My mahjong mat is warped because I kept it rolled up in storage for a long time.
Ah, so he's here to buy a new one.
Anyway, you kids like mahjong? I figured that young people didn't even know about the game.
Please don't underestimate my club. We'll play anything that has a winner and a loser. We play mahjong, slot machines, horse racing, bike racing, calligraphy, flower arrangement, and croquet.
I think she'll make us fight in the middle of a lava pit someday.
Of course, Oishi also reveals that he's the one who's been practicing the Tsubame Gaeshi, so of course the club begs him to show them. He first gets introduced to Keiichi, and gee, I think this is the first time we've ever seen him interact with these kids in a friendly manner. Anyway, Oishi pulls off the move pretty flawlessly.
How? You're amazing!
That's what she said.
I had never seen Keiichi and Oishi play mahjong together. He always approached Keiichi as a detective, so he never thought of him as someone he could trust. He only thought of Keiichi as a decoy to expose the culprits among the villagers, or some nonsense like that.
You know what? It kind of feels like maybe, just maybe, Rika has rolled yet another 6. Don't you think?
Oh, there you are. Oishi-san, I got it for you.
That voice sounded so familiar. I'd heard it before, but that couldn't be right. Hanyu always warned me, don't expect too much. It couldn't be him.
Oh, Akasaka-san! Thank you very much.
Holy fucking shit. It's Akasaka! He's here! He's never been here in the 5th year! Rika, though stunned, asks him why he's back in town.
I left my daughter with my parents, and I came here on a trip with my wife.
His what? But she's dead, isn't she?
Yes, you saved her life. You must have no idea.
Okay, so bear with me. Apparently, in this timeline, Akasaka actually listened to Rika and returned to Tokyo upon her warning, which means his wife never went up to the roof and so never slipped and fell. Oishi and Akasaka have to take off. Oishi needed the new mat because they're going to be playing with Sato and Kumagai. Oh god, poor Kumagai, he's gonna get taken for everything he's worth. But before they go, Akasaka says that he'll be here until after the Watanagashi, which means he'll be here for everything. He might actually be able to help.
I felt like I rolled a 6 without even throwing the die. Hanyu, Does this also seem like luck to you?
Oh. Seems like fate is on your side this time.
Remember that day we held a club activity in this toy store? The moment I refused to play the fishing game, this world started changing. My strong will is going to change my fate.
Rika hasn't felt this good in a very long time. The club leaves the store, and on the way home, Keiichi accidentally pushes over the thug's motorcycles, as he's wont to do. But Rika gets a little high off her newfound power.
Just watch. I have the power to get rid of them now.
She gets right in their faces, and just at the moment when it looks like they're going to sock her a new one, 2 men in overalls approach and take care of the situation.
Those working men weren't just random people who were passing by. I knew who they were.
Takano came through. These are apparently some of the mountain dogs she assigned to protect Rika. So the mountain dogs are undercover, often appearing as mildly skilled labor, huh? Interesting. So, at this point, you might be wondering, everything seems to be going perfectly fine in this world. The adults are finally listening to Rika, at least kind of. None of her friends have triggered the red flags that make them go insane. Everything seems to be working out just fine. So when does the shit start? Well, it starts with an old man in Okinomiya stumbling upon a corpse, in a scene that's very reminiscent of one that we've seen before. A very long time ago.
It was a very humid day. Not even a slight breeze was blowing. It had been an unpleasant summer, one that wasn't only hot, but swelteringly so.
So, I've got a bad feeling about this. How about you?
Satoko was supposed to be cooking dinner tonight. We didn't have much inside the refrigerator, so I asked her to go grocery shopping. I was just watching TV and relaxing while I waited for her.
But Satoko doesn't come home. Rika, understandably considering what's happened in the past when Satoko has gone missing, starts to panic. She calls for Hanyu, but she isn't always around and can't hear her. Rika goes on a mad dash around town trying to track her down, but she's not at any of her usual stores. She even runs into Rena, who was literally just grocery shopping, and she says that there's no way Satoko would have missed the sale she was just at.
What's wrong? Can't I help out? Talk to me.
I know it. I remember it. I knew this was coming. I've experienced a world before where Satoko suddenly disappeared. I should see it for myself. I needed to see if I'd gotten stuck inside a devastating world again.
She refuses Rena's help and runs off to the place that, by this point, we all know she must be.
I thought that this world was different. I thought I could move on to a happy future, but this was just horrible.
Satoko's old house is not abandoned. In fact, it's very occupied. Rika falls to her knees, devastated. That's when Satoko sees her.
Rika?
Satoko, don't stay here. Let's go home.
I think I'm going to go back to this house. My uncle came back. He told me we should live together in this house.
I know that's not what you want. You don't want to live with your mean uncle.
But I have no choice. If I go back to your house, he'll come and get me.
Once again, just like in Chapter 3, just when she got her smile back, Satoko has it all ripped away from her. But this time around, we much more fully understand the situation. We know just how deep Satoko's trauma goes, and also how deep her guilt does as well. She's going to try to bear this situation all by herself. She's not going to ask for help, just like Keiichi and Shion and Rena. But now we also know something else. We know that she's sick, and that her uncle will be the catalyst to make it fly out of control very quickly.
Satoko, what the hell are you doing? You better not go anywhere.
Teppei corrals her back inside, and that's that. Rika can't plead with her anymore. So she runs.
I thought this was a perfect world up until today. Why was God doing this to me? It was too cruel.
But still, Rika has changed in the past few days. Instead of just giving up, she doesn't want to let this chance slip through her fingers. So she calls the one person who she thinks might be able to help her.
Akasaka-san, he went to the hot springs in Wakara with his wife.
Can you get a hold of him somehow?
But no can do. He's enjoying his vacation with his wife, and ultimately he'd probably just tell Rika to call the Child Consultation Center as well. Akasaka will be back in time for the festival, but that will already be too late for Satoko. The clock on her life is already ticking. There's one more place Rika can try. She's going to have to rely on the Irie clinic once again. After all, Satoko is a very important subject to them. At the very least, a high level of stress will mess with their tests. At the most, the little gremlin has Stockholmed the entire staff into feeling a modicum of human affection. Immediately after she shows up, she meets with Irie and Takano. After explaining the situation to them, Irie briefly wonders about calling the police, but she hasn't been seriously injured yet, so no can do. Because remember, a lot of Rika's panic is recalling what will happen if they don't save her, not what already has. You can't call the police on prophecy. But there's still one thing that Takano can do, but she has to go through Irie to get it.
Please save Satoko. In less than a few days, she'll really end up in horrible shape. If you try to wait and see how things go, it'll be no different than watching her die.
Takano-san, please do what Rika-chan wants you to do. Satoko-chan is very important to us. Protecting her is considered one of your work orders. Kyousuke Irie is asking you as your boss. Please, save Satoko-chan.
You're not telling me to kidnap her and lock her up somewhere safe. You want me to help her so she can have a normal, happy life. In other words, you want her uncle dead, right?
Takano is initially not down with the plan, but together Irie and Rika convince her to call in the mountain dogs. She leaves the room to do so, but when she comes back, it doesn't look like it went well. Because of the murder of Rena back in Okinomiya, the entire reason that Teppei came back in the first place, the police have him marked and are watching him as a suspect. It will be nigh impossible at this point in time to murder him without anybody knowing about it, at least not without months of preparation. And that is time that we simply do not have. The only time they could do it is immediately after Watanagashi, when the police won't be watching him as closely, but that's too far as well. And so they, as the adults in this situation, tell her the words she so desperately didn't want to hear.
I think it's best to follow the rules. We should report this to the police or the Child Consultation Center. We can even talk to the school.
I did that so many times, but it never worked!
Wow. I think this is the first time we've heard Rika raise her voice. Ever.
I've cooperated with you guys all this time. I never asked for anything, and I just gave you my support. But now you can't save Satoko? With all that power you have, why are you so afraid of saving her? Fine, I get it now. I know now that this world is nothing but a dead end. It's the same old fate that I keep on repeating. You just burn to death in the mountains. You just take sleeping pills and commit suicide. I'll die just like I always do too. I'll lose my life without knowing how I'm killed. This life is nothing but a dead end.
Rika sobs. She wants to see Satoko.
I'm a witch who has lived for 100 years, but I still couldn't rid myself of the human emotions in my heart.
The next morning, Rika drags herself to school, hoping that maybe Satoko will be there. She's not, of course. Not when there's an entire house to clean and a mahjong game to wait on. Chie-sensei tries to ask her about Satoko, but Rika has devolved into pure apathy.
This world is finished anyway. If I leave matters alone, then a few days after the Watanagashi festival, my movie reel will be cut, as I'm murdered like usual. And I'll return to the beginning of this month again. And so I'll continue to live forever, in June 1983.
Rika tries to leave school to head back home, but Chie instead takes her to the teacher's office, and Rika reluctantly tells her what happened. Chie vows to do everything she can as Satoko's teacher to resolve the situation, but we already know that even if she is well-meaning, Chie can't actually do anything.
It doesn't matter if they find proof of abuse or not!
That sudden outburst came from Shion, as it turns out that the rest of the club has been eavesdropping on their conversation. We go back over the situation again. Satoko has made a false call in the past, which means the consultation center is going to be way less likely to help her.
What the hell? They're supposed to help her before something happens, right? Are they really not going to do anything unless she's seriously injured?
Calm down, you two! I feel the same as Shichon and Keiichi-kun. I don't want to wait until something bad happens, but we need to think about what we can do!
All they can do is go through the legal channels.
We don't need to be so roundabout. All we have to do is ambush that bastard and kill him!
Hey,
Listen, Shion, I know you don't remember this, but we already tried that man, and trust me, it did not end well. Shion gets even more pissed as the others shut her down, but eventually they calm her down enough to promise her that Chie is going to do something about this situation. So to that end, she heads over to the Houjou residence after school. But just like last time, Teppei just claims that Satoko is sick and absolutely nothing gets sorted. When she gets back to the school, the club is still waiting there for her and her explanation.
What the hell are you doing? You're a teacher, right? You came back just because he didn't let you see her?
Stop it, Shion. That's about what we expected.
I'm sure Satoko has a bruise on her face by now. That's why he didn't want you to see her.
Calm down. Let's make a plan. We care about her just as much as you do. We're not going to abandon her. Let's come up with a way to save Satoko. Shion threatens to commit murder all by herself if the others aren't with her, but the others try their best to shut her down.
Then give me a different idea. Come on. Come on. See? You can't even say anything. I can save Satoko in 1,500 seconds. I'll just drag his body into the Onigifuchi swamp and dump him in there. What's wrong? Why don't you come up with another idea for saving her?
That's not the point. Let me tell you something. 1,500 seconds? That's taking way too long. I would save her within 1,000 seconds. If I were you, I'd just leave here silently and do what I want to do. Do you know why I'm not doing that? It's because someone told me once that even if it's the only option you have, murder is still something you should never do. You just think it's the best solution because you're not thinking properly.
Holy shit, Rena, go off. As a small aside, I've gotten asked by my voice actors a couple of different times what the significance of the phrase 1,500 seconds is, and for those of you who don't know, I haven't necessarily been able to tell them. I often only tell my voice actors the things their characters know in the moment, but this is the point when it finally begins to make sense. 1,500 seconds, besides being super fun to say, props to the translator for that banger, is used to indicate a mindset. A toxic, unhealthy mindset. It becomes a shorthand for anger, violence, and in essence, the catalyst for whatever the curse of Oyashiro-sama really is to take hold. In short, up until this point, only Keiichi has used this phrase to indicate that his mind is going to not great places. But now, Shion uses it instead. Because we're so primed with this phrase in previous chapters, it works as such an unbelievably good shorthand for the audience, indicating that Shion right now is thinking exactly how Keiichi was thinking back in Chapter 3. And again, we all know how that went. Ryukishi has shut down Shion's entire argument with words he put in her mouth. Anyway, Rena tells Shion off with the words she heard from Keiichi back in the previous chapter, thinking that someone must have told her those words a long time ago. She tries to get Shion to sit down and brainstorm with the rest of the group, but this only agitates her further. She tries to run out of the room, but a surprising individual stops her.
Wait a minute, Shion. You're not understanding even half of what Rena's trying to tell you. Do you think Satoko would appreciate it if you saved her by committing murder?
I'm not trying to seek her appreciation. I don't care what happens to me. Her happiness is all that matters.
Wow, where have we heard that one before? Keiichi is simply able to shut her down, using everything she said against her to tell her that she too wants to have a normal life with Satoko after this. How does he know all of that? Come on, guys, don't be dumb.
You want us all to be happy. Just like a few days ago. But if you murder him, we'll never be like that again. Your wish will never come true if you commit murder. Satoko will also curse herself. She'll blame herself, thinking she's the reason Shion became a murderer. In fact, who's gonna force Satoko to eat her squash if you get locked up? You're supposed to do those things.
You know, in a way, the second half of the story is really a redemption arc for Keiichi. In Chapter 6, he atoned for the things he did in Chapter 1, and now here he's atoning for the murder he did in Chapter 3. And this is done very much on purpose. Keiichi is growing. Keiichi is learning. He's violently rubbing his two brain cells together in order to take something from his experiences. There's a reason we haven't been following Rika from the very beginning, and it's because such a core element of this story is Keiichi's growth. Anyway, Keiichi blocks the door so that Shion can't leave, and in her anger, she throws a chair at his head. She kinda has a history of doing that, but still, even if he's now bleeding a little, Keiichi doesn't move.
That was nothing! You thought I would move out of the way? I'm not gonna move from here even if you kill me. If I let you go, we might never see you again. Satoko will think about you every day, and her heart will be filled with sadness. If that happens, there won't be anything we can do to make her happy. I don't want Satoko to live in a sad world like that.
He promises her that they are going to resolve the situation and to please just trust them. And finally, even if she doesn't agree, Shion goes to the corner, sits down, and sulks. God, what a bitch, I love her. The principal walks in, having overheard the conversation, and he and Chie express their commitment to helping Satoko as well. The gang comes up with the initial plan of contacting the Child Consultation Center and seeing what happens from there. But there's an important distinction in their plan from last time. They know that the Child Consultation Center is probably going to put her case on hold, so for them, this is only a first step. Mion promises to call them as soon as she hears what's up, and they all head home for the night. Alright, gang. I need to have a little sidebar with you, because there's something I need to talk to you all about. You're not in trouble, but it is a serious matter. The next section of this chapter is very long, very tedious, and very frustrating. It's written that way very much on purpose. Like I stated last chapter, Ryuukishi spent a large portion of time before writing the story as a social worker, so is pretty intimately familiar with the inner workings of Japanese governmental social systems. And the next bit is literally all about teenagers trying to navigate Japanese bureaucracy. He's doing that thing that he does where he mechanically alters his writing style in order to make you as the reader feel the same emotion that the characters are. So, for the next little while, the story becomes very repetitive and frankly kinda hard to get through. Now, props for having the balls to do that, and honestly the chapter wouldn't be complete without this section, so really you should just go read it yourself. In any other circumstance, like I've done with this entire story, I would go through this section in exhaustive, boring detail in order to make you all just as frustrated with me as you are with the story, but listen, I'm tired. And the last video is gonna be at least 4 hours long. Minimum. So, please forgive me if I really skim through this, like we're talking bare minimum detail in order to keep up with the plot. We won't be cutting out the entirety of the Satoko subplot, don't worry, but we're gonna cut out a lot of the shit in the middle. So, alright, are you ready for the Higurashi lightning round? Okay, let's go, try to keep up. Mion gives Keiichi a call that night to let him know that obviously they put Satoko's case on hold. Not knowing quite what to do, Keiichi does something unexpected and asks his parents for advice, and they actually tell him something interesting. They can always go and appeal the center's choice. So, the next day, the entire club heads down there after school to speak with a social worker. This doesn't work. The day after that, they take their entire class down to the center. This also doesn't work. The day after that, they grab all the extra kids who go to school in Okinomiya, Kameda's entire baseball team, a bunch of the weird otakus from Angel Mort, and several people from the Irie clinic to go to the center. This still doesn't work. It comes out that the center quietly contacted the Sonozaki family to see if they have anything to do with this growing protest, and hearing from Oryou that they don't because she hates the Houjou family for what they did during the dam conflict, the center elects to simply ignore the protest and not listen to a word they say. Needless to say, this makes Keiichi, who's been the central pillar of this affair the entire time, pretty ticked off. Simultaneously, he's been attending Watanagashi festival meetings, and it is at one of these where he rips the old folks of Hinamizawa a new one for ignoring a little girl in need. As it turns out, no one actually hates Satoko, they're just afraid that everyone else does, so once this is all cleared up, everyone rallies behind him. Which means there's only one obstacle in the way of freeing Satoko: parlaying with Oryou Sonozaki. But now they've got the mayor on their side, so the next night the entire club heads over to the Sonozaki residence to speak with her. Oryou sits like a queen wrapped up in her futon, and she is also surrounded by several other members of the Sonozaki family, including, let's be honest, the real queen here.
The Child Consultation Center is simply doing their job. What more are you expecting from them?
Mom, let me explain this to you. Satoko's uncle is a horrible man.
She's not going to die! Stop making such a big fuss over this!
She might not die, but...
Then shut up, you idiot! Worse, you're not even willing to risk your own life over this! Grow a backbone, you twit!
Even Rika doing her cutesy act isn't resolving the situation. So, needless to say, this is gonna be an uphill battle. But as the conversation begins to devolve, Akane notices that Keiichi seems to have something to say, and so asks him to speak.
Leave aside the fact that it's Satoko Houjou for a minute. The important thing to note is that a villager is in danger right now. In order to help that person, we have no choice but to make an appeal to the Child Consultation Center.
Oryou argues that the town and the Shishibone government have to work together now to make the village prosper, and that he's simply being impatient for wanting them to take faster action.
When Satoko showed up at school 3 days after she was kidnapped, she was already at her wit's end. After only 3 days! I'm making an appeal to the Child Consultation Center, asking them to save her as soon as possible. I'm going to continue going to the center until they do.
Well then, there you go. You can just continue your appeal. It's none of the Sonozaki's business. But of course it is, as they're currently the ones preventing the appeal from going through. And Akane knows it. Shion then reveals that they already have the town council on their side, but this only succeeds in pissing Oryou off that they made a decision like that behind her back.
Let me tell you this straight up. We'll be satisfied as long as that old lady in the futon just nods her head. I'm not expecting you all to get involved in our protest. All I need is for her to nod.
And what if she said no?
I'd smash her head in and make Mion the new family head so she can nod for us.
Holy shit, Keiichi, where the hell did that come from? This is probably not a good idea, my guy. You're gonna piss Oryou right the fuck off.
What the fucking hell did you just say, you goddamn son of a bitch? Someone bring me a sword. I'll cut him into pieces and dump him in the well.
Are you ready for a fight, old lady? Whatever you ate tonight will be your last supper.
Oh god, he's not backing down. Oh god, he's letting his emotions get the best of him. Jesus fucking Christ. They go back and forth a little longer, and Keiichi cools down enough to give Oryou a very respectful bow. Finally, Akane gives their response. She understands the situation, but the Sonozakis and Houjous are enemies. They can't just offer her aid without an apology because of honor. Listen, Japan, I love you, but please. But Rena has a counter to this. If Satoko has to apologize to the Sonozakis, then shouldn't they have to apologize to her about discriminating against her?
Satoko-chan wasn't the one supporting the dam project. She's just a child of those who did. But you hate her just for her last name.
Keiichi reasserts that he will do whatever it takes to fight for Satoko, and the Sonozaki family discusses. Even Mion's father is on their side, but Oryou is not having any of it.
Who even cares? Anyone who bears the Houjou name is an ungrateful little shit.
Also, she's still pissed about Keiichi threatening her. Even though the entire village is with Keiichi, she's still against him. And in the end, it's only her opinion that really matters. Shortly thereafter, her blood pressure gets too high, and the club is asked to leave.
But I still haven't gotten my answer.
Keiichi-kun, you need to learn to play by the adults' rules. I've been very patient with you today. That's because you're a friend of my daughter's. You need to reflect on that, don't you think?
They've gotten so close. They've come so far, done so much, but in the end, they very well might get shut down by just one little old lady. You could say that in the end, it didn't even matter. I want you guys to know that wasn't in my script. I think I thought about saying it in the script, and then I didn't, and then now I just did it anyway, so you're welcome for that. However, the mayor still stays behind to discuss some things with Oryou before the night wraps up, so the club waits outside and tries not to mourn. But Rena is not as hopeless as the rest of them.
She might have raised her voice, but she wasn't actually angry. I wasn't scared at all either. Not at all.
Rena, what are you on right now? Finally, Kimiyoshi emerges from the house, and they asked him how it went. Apparently, they got her approval. Hold on, what? I guess Keiichi really was cooking after all. The Sonozaki family are going to back their protest.
Now you have the Onigafuchi Guardians on your side. With them, there's no way you can lose. But you can't put up a disgraceful fight either. Can you take this responsibility?
Yes, I can.
My, you're a brave boy. You do have my respect. It takes great courage to address the Virago like that. It gave me chills when you jumped on top of her and put your hands around her throat.
Wait, hold up. Keiichi didn't do that. I'm pretty sure I would remember that happening. But apparently, that's how it's going to be. Oryou can't just go back on her stance on something without being threatened. As it turns out, she's forgiven the Houjou family a long time ago, and in fact, is actually rather fond of Satoko. And ultimately, in the end, they had already won. This whole meeting was really a formality, as the Sonozaki family can't actually go against what the rest of the council wants. Anyway, all's well that ends well. Akane tries to set Keiichi up with either of her two daughters, and everyone leaves feeling much more hopeful than when they arrived. According to Kimiyoshi, he's going to get in touch with the center, bandy Oryou's name around, and see what happens. Satoko might even be free by this time tomorrow.
Is Satoko really going to be rescued from her fate?
Yeah, I'm sure she will. Also, Rika-chan, don't use words like fate anymore. Putting it like that, it's like it's already been decided.
After thinking about it for a second, Rika agrees.
You told me you could change fate as easily as tearing a piece of paper. And after 100 years, you're about to break the horrible cycle of Teppei's return. I can now believe that the danger that awaits me is something that can be changed as well.
Keiichi has no idea what she's talking about, but it's fine. Several phone calls get made that evening, and things are definitely going to go down tomorrow. The next day, the mayor comes to inform the club that despite his best efforts, the Child Consultation Center is not going to budge on their stance. Apparently, the man in charge is a city boy who was not here during the dam conflict, but this is all right. All this means is that Hinamizawa just has to reassert itself as the craziest town of motherfuckers in the Shishibone Prefecture. So these kids are sitting here thinking, sure, maybe like 30 people will show up to this protest today. Nah, no way. Not when the Sonozakis are involved. There's over like 150 people in front of that fucking library. Literally every single major character is there, including Keiichi's dad, who doesn't even have a sprite. Needless to say, the people inside the office are shaking in their boots. Kimiyoshi even gets out his big megaphone. Holy shit, this is so punk. They're just getting ready to start chanting their slogan before Keiichi and a couple of others head inside when... uh-oh. Here comes trouble.
I need to have a talk with the two of you right now. May I? Oh, and can it be in private, please?
So, as it turns out, they can't do their protest because they're obstructing government property, which is frankly just some fucking bullshit. Now, bear in mind, Oishi is on their side. Ultimately, that's why he's having this talk with them instead of forcefully breaking them up now. But he has to do his job. And now the protest finds itself stuck between a rock and a hard place. They're going to have to protest from across the road, but that won't put pressure on them like they'd like, and it will take much longer. Maybe days. Maybe weeks.
In the world I imagined, it was too late to save Satoko by the day before Watanagashi. I don't know if she'll still be sane the next time we see her.
We got help from this many people, yet we can't even go inside the building.
Damn it. Damn it. Damn it! I told Rika-chan I could defeat anything if I put my mind to it. I don't want to give up here.
Meanwhile, over at the Houjou place, Satoko is not doing great. She has actually gotten sick now. Teppei, as it turns out, is only still here because he's trying to locate the bank book that he is convinced his wife hid before she died. He's turned over the entire house, but no luck. The only place he hasn't checked is Satoshi's bedroom, but he had to make a deal with Satoko to keep her complacent, so he hasn't been able to go in there. Now that she's thoroughly out of it, however, it might just be his chance. But of course, this is Satoko we're talking about. Trying to open the door causes a loud noise, and Satoko immediately runs to him.
Stop! Stop! Don't go inside Nini's room! Don't mess around in there! Leave it alone until he comes home! Nini! Nini!
Shut the fuck up!
He sends Satoko flying, but she just won't quit. Once he's hit her once, however, it's all over. He doesn't care about hiding it from the center anymore. Back at the protest, Keiichi is getting pissed.
Oishi-san, will you please leave us alone for today? Satoko's in danger as we speak.
Hey now, if you touch me, I can arrest you for obstructing the law.
Even if he's on their side, Oishi is still just kind of a little bitch. Love him to pieces. He gets a call from the chief, and as he's on the line, it's clear he's trying to stall for them as long as he can.
I've already spoken to the leader. It's taking time for him to explain it to his people. If they call him again, tell them to wait for a little bit.
Oishi-san, how could you lie to him like that? The chief warned us that this could turn into a riot. I think we should call for help and shut this down before anything happens.
Kuma-chan, don't be mean. He got this many people together in order to help his friend. That's no small feat, you know.
God, he's such a bastard, but he's such a good guy. In this house, we love and respect Oishi, damn it. Alas, he, as the police, has to do his job. But he can take a very lengthy cigarette break first. And then, right on cue, just as if this is exactly what Oishi was stalling for, a big black car pulls up. It contains a very important looking man who, as it turns out, is the Sonozaki representative on the prefectural assembly. And he is pissed. His lawyer backs him up, and Oishi, oh no, Oishi has no choice but to step aside and let them pass. What a damn shame.
Okay. I understand. My apologies. Well then, you can carry on, everyone.
And so, just as planned, the slogan is shouted, and Keiichi, Mion, Shion, Rika, and a couple of adults are going in.
It was cool inside the building. Unlike the outside world. I could still hear the crowd, but at a lower volume. It was loud enough to hear their cheers.
The head of the office is hiding away and tries to refuse to see them, but once again, the power of the Sonozakis pulls through when the mayor of Shishibone himself calls up the head and insists that he sees them. As it turns out, he and Oryou are in the middle of having a very lovely conversation.
Sorry for the surprise. If I'm going to ask someone a favor, I want to see them in person. Thank you. Really.
And of course, under all this pressure, the head of the office finally agrees to call the Houjou residents and get this whole situation sorted immediately. This guy should be proud of himself, though. It took Oryou Sonozaki showing up in person to get him to budge. What a fucking hard noggin. Anyway, that means that there's just one more obstacle in their way of saving Satoko. And that's, of course, Satoko herself.
Do you guys have nothing better to do? Why don't you stop calling me and work on your other cases?
The office head tells Teppei that someone is going to visit his place immediately. But Teppei can't have that because now he's left visible bruises. Satoko is currently curled up in a ball and sobbing in the corner. The head of the office asks that Teppei put Satoko on the phone, and with great reluctance, he finally does.
No matter what happens, we're a happy family, right? Don't you dare forget that. All right?
He then threatens to destroy Satoshi's room if she doesn't keep up the facade. And so, she does.
Yes. Everything is working out between my uncle and I.
Hello? Satoko. It's me, Keiichi. Are you okay? Satoko, we're about to come save you. If you admit that you need help, the Child Consultation Center will put you under their protection immediately. Everyone from Hinamizawa is here to save you. They're even skipping the preparation for tomorrow's festival.
He also has a message from Oryou.
She's sorry about how she treated you. She wants you to come visit her house sometime.
But Keiichi can say all he wants about how much everyone has worked. There's only one thing that's going to be able to reach Satoko now.
Satoko? It's Rika.
Rika?
When you were taken away by your uncle, I thought it was an unchangeable fate. I gave up, thinking that there was nothing but a dead end ahead of us. But I found out that there's no such thing as fate. Satoko, don't give in to misfortune anymore. We're almost there. All you need to do is to nod your head.
But I have to get stronger.
That's because of how much you suffered. You're trying to overcome that. I understand you're trying to get stronger as an apology toward your brother. I can respect that courage, and it shows how much you've grown up. Satoshi would be proud of you if he was here right now. He fought. He fought his horrible aunt. He fought in order to save you. He didn't just take the violence that was dealt to him. I was no different from you once. I stopped fighting because I gave up. I thought it was a waste of time to seek help. But I've decided to fight. I'm going to change this fate on my own. I'm going to persuade you to nod your head. Satoko, he's right behind you, isn't he?
Yes, he's here.
Are you scared? That's exactly how Satoshi felt when he tried to protect you. You have to understand that. Do you know what he was trying to show you? If you don't know, Satoshi will never come back to you. Show Satoshi that you've grown as brave as he is.
Sure, that's easy for Rika to say, but she's not the one who has to survive her uncle until they can make it to her.
Satoko was scared, just like Rika said. Her teeth were chattering, and she felt shivers running down her spine. But she had to face him. She had to challenge him, to fight him, and to break the cycle.
Satoko, I'm going to give you the phone to an employee of the consultation center. Tell them with your own words.
Satoko looked at Teppei again as she listened to the question. Looked straight into the face of terror. All she ever did was hide behind Satoshi's back. It wasn't only Rika. Her Nini was watching her too.
Help me. Help me!
Teppei hits her so hard she rolls across the floor.
Oh, Satoko. You finally betrayed me, huh?
I hate you! Get out of my house! This house belongs to my Nini and me! This house belongs to my family! I hate you! Get out of here!
He goes to hit her again, but Satoko has regained her fire. She leaps onto his back and struggles against him. But almost immediately, she is spared. The police are already here. Yet the protesters don't know that. Immediately, engines are started. The club hitches a ride. It's a race to the Houjou house.
Oh, don't worry about that, Maebara-san. The police entered the Houjou residence not a moment ago. he wouldn't have had any time to hurt Satoko-chan.
What? But why?
No idea. It's a mystery to me. Anyway, could you break up this crowd already? I'll be leaving now, so excuse me. Have a good year.
Oishi, you slept like a dog. You and Officer just waiting for the word, didn't you? They make it to Satoko in much less of a dire mood now, and they all surround her as soon as they see her.
Satoko-chan, are you okay? Are you?
Do I look okay to you?
Yep, she's back. That was the most Satoko thing she could have possibly said. They rush to take her to the clinic immediately. But before she goes...
Do you see what I did, Rika? I can act when it counts.
Yes, I saw your courage. You won. You broke the bonds of fate.
The two girls hug it out and cry. And God damn it, shut up, that's just them, I swear. Fucking shit. Alright, before we get into the second half of this story, yes, that was just the first half, fuck me. I want to take just a second to talk about Satoko and just kind of break down what just happened, cause it all went a little fast. Satoko gets, admittedly, a little shafted in this plot. The third chapter, which is allegedly about her, is actually about Keiichi, and the seventh chapter, which is its answer arc counterpart, is really just about Rika, and her conflict is often used more as a tool for other characters' development and growth than her own. However, there's still plenty to say about Satoko herself, and how the lesson that she needs to learn is tied into everyone else's. Higurashi has a lot to say about communication, and specifically about using said communication to make better choices. This is illustrated very clearly earlier this chapter. The conflict with Rena and Rena's father, you know, the one that took us half the last chapter to solve, and not well at that, was solved off-screen in like several minutes, because Rena decided to ask Mion to listen to her problems. Rika's problem, though much more fantastical in nature, is the same way. She's already slowly learning that she can rely on her friends to help her when she needs it. And finally, we come to Satoko. Satoko's whole philosophy of becoming stronger in her brother's absence is not an ignoble one. In fact, there are many worse things she could have taken from her brother's disappearance. The flaw in her logic isn't the idea, it's the execution. Satoko thinks that by enduring her uncle's punishments, that will make her stronger. And it won't. It's just going to tear her down again bit by bit. And this is why Keiichi's speech to her on the phone about how many people are there to help her doesn't work. Because to Satoko, it doesn't matter how many people have come to help, she's still going to endure regardless. But then Rika gets on the phone. She uses some pretty harsh language. I cut a lot of it out for the sake of time, but she says to Satoko what needs to be said. That the true way to get stronger is to stand up for yourself instead of letting yourself be pushed around. And it's finally this simple statement from her best friend that enables her to break that cycle and shows Satoshi how strong she really is. It's something that only she can do. She is all alone in that house with Teppei, after all. But then we realize just how much help she really has. Satoko doesn't have to endure the consequences of standing up for herself for long because the police are already outside. It's a great little metaphor and works really well to convey the true point of all of this. Anyway, now we've finally seen the gang succeed before it's too late, but yada yada, you know the drill by now. It's Higurashi, where's the blood and guts and shit? Oh, it's coming. Believe me, we're now right about to get into it. We pick up our tale on the night of Watanagashi, and honestly, it's been a couple of chapters since we've experienced a truly fun one. Satoko is happy, everyone else is happy, the club is having fun, even Shion is there to join in.
Satoko, there's no reason to hold back this year. Let's enjoy the festival with all our might.
You don't even need to mention it. I too declare that I will be the victor.
At one point, Oishi appears with Akasaka, and Rika sulks a little, but she shakes it off quickly.
This is the best Watanagashi I've ever had.
Yes, I feel the same way. You've been around a lot longer than me. If it's your best one, then it must be mine too. Let's go have fun, the both of us. It's a special night for both me and you.
But there's still just one little problem. If nobody does anything, Rika is still gonna die in a couple of days. Not only that, if she doesn't do something now, Takano and Tomitake are going to die tonight. And if that happens, no one's going to be around to protect Rika.
They are obviously here at the festival, and Rika once again tries to warn them of their fate. They don't necessarily take her very seriously.
My. Frankly, it would be an honor for us to be the victims of the 5th curse of Oyashiro-sama.
Takano, you really are a freak. I would know because frankly it takes one to know one. Rika really tries to get in there, attempting to freak them out by telling him exactly how they're going to die.
I'm gonna claw out my throat like the terminal symptoms of L5. Don't worry, I took the shots. I don't have the disease.
Once again, Takano expresses that they upped Rika's security, but at the moment that's not really her concern.
This is the sad part about being me. I know the future, but I can't tell them. It's as if that was a rule of the world. People tend not to believe what I tell them.
In the end, they agree to be extra careful, but she doesn't really succeed at convincing them of anything.
Tomitake, Takano, goodbye. Thank you for everything.
But she's not given up yet. Next, she goes to talk to Irie.
I understand. It might be a message from Oyashiro-sama. If that really happens tonight, it would be the 5th time in a row. I'll tell the two of them to be cautious too.
He's not necessarily all that helpful either. There's still one more person she can go to.
Oh, it's Furude-san. I've been looking for you. Akasaka-san wants to say goodbye.
I guess he and I are not meant to be.
Oishi is another person Rika has tried to talk to in the past, and he actually tends to take her more seriously. The problem is that as soon as her predictions come true, he starts to suspect her. So Rika tells him that she overheard someone talking about killing them.
I think they were saying that they were going to attack them somewhere between Hinamizawa and Okinomiya.
Oishi agrees to spare a cruiser patrol for that area, but that's all he can really do.
Thank you. No one else believed me, and I didn't know what to do.
It's my job to believe these things. We'll just be glad if nothing happened. Be happy to swing and miss. Well, that's what my late colleague used to say.
Still, this doesn't feel like enough. So going off of the same lie she just told Oishi, Rika decides to finally, oh my god, talk to the club as well.
No way! You heard someone talking about that? On the day of the festival? That's so wrong!
The club has plenty of suggestions about who Rika should talk to, but those also happen to be all the people that Rika already talked to. But the club isn't done yet. Even if there's not a lot they can do, they can still try to stick with Tomitake and Takano until the end of the festival.
Do you think you can prevent Tomitake and Takano's deaths, Rika?
It might be impossible. Their deaths might be the bell that portends my doom. But Takano told me earlier that even if they die, the mountain dogs are supposed to keep protecting me.
What if it still doesn't work out?
Then I will just have to die. Anyway, I'm not going to give up until the very end. I won't give up and spend the rest of my time drinking wine.
Hanyu expresses her doubts. I haven't gotten super into it yet, but in case you haven't noticed, Hanyu has spent a lot of this chapter tempering Rika's expectations, of telling her not to expect too much, and it's frankly kind of a buzzkill.
If I'm an actress trying to get up on the stage, Hanyu is a real bystander. I understand. Hanyu keeps telling me not to get my hopes up because she cares about me. Because I hope to defeat fate, I get hurt when that hope is betrayed. And the more I get hurt, the closer I get to losing my mind and disappearing. For Hanyu, that means losing her only friend.
But even if Hanyu knows more, even if for whatever reason there is no true way for Rika to escape her fate, she can't give up without trying. As Tomitake and Takano try to leave the festival, the club tries many ways to stop them. Yet they are adults, and eventually they do take off. Rika just hopes that her warning was enough. The two stop at the clinic, as Tomitake has some paperwork he needs to grab. But before they leave, Takano touches his hand, and...
Hey, Jirou-san. I have something very important to tell you. Will you listen to me?
I hope you didn't see me claw my throat out in a dream.
What would you say if I did? I'm really surprised. That girl might have a godlike power after all.
Hey guys. Quick question. Are you seeing the flashing red lights too, or is that just me? Takano proceeds to butter him up, and then proceeds to tell him about how excited she is because her dream is almost real.
Didn't I tell you before? Or do you forget about everything we talk about in bed? Finally, the curse of Oyashiro-sama is going to come true. That's what I've been dreaming about ever since I was a child.
Then she says that she can't be with him anymore, that the two belong in different worlds.
Tonight is a night of farewells. Thank you for teaching me about the sunlit realm.
And then Takano asks him to make a decision, to continue being a human or join her in the realm of demons. He unfortunately has to decline, mostly because he still doesn't really know what she's talking about.
Oyashiro-sama united the humans and demons, but I guess he can't unite you and me.
She opens the door, and the mountain dogs enter the room.
What is this all about?
Hinamizawa syndrome is like a bomb with a lit fuse. Your plan is to dismantle that bomb before it explodes. However, there are some people in Tokyo who want to see it go off.
There are people who want that to happen? Hinamizawa syndrome is a very dangerous disease. You know that as well as I do.
It was actually my mission from the very start. We belonged to different worlds from the moment we met.
Takano offers Tomitake the chance to join her. One last time, even offering herself to him fully if he does so. It's clear that despite this sudden but inevitable betrayal, she does actually care for him. But Takano is a girl boss, and she's not going to let no man get in the way of what she wants, which, as it turns out, might be to destroy an entire town. You go, girl. You slay? The mountain dogs attack Tomitake, and though he puts up a good fight, they outnumber him, and are also trained special ops, so he is quickly incapacitated. Takano approaches him, carrying a small case. Inside is, come on, say it with me now, a syringe.
What's in that syringe?
Oh, come now. I'm sure you know what it is.
No, we destroyed all of them.
So, clearly she's going to inject him with a concentrated form of the disease. You know, the one that will inevitably make him claw out his own throat and die. But wait, didn't Tomitake mention earlier that he already got vaccinated?
That vaccine you took before you came here was fake. You may not have noticed it, but you're already an L3 patient of the Hinamizawa syndrome. Jirou-san, you have a tendency to look away when you get an injection. That's not very smart.
By the way, just as a side note, Rika mentioned earlier that people who are infected with Hinamizawa syndrome can hear Hanyu more easily than people who aren't. So the fact that Tomitake could hear her stomping on the floor of the ritual storehouse but Takano couldn't was an early sign that he might actually be infected already. Ryukishi, please go die in a hole.
He struggles as Takano explains that the liquid in the syringe is, of course, like we predicted, H173, a substance that will infect him immediately. Tomitake obviously continues to struggle, which forces the mountain dogs to knock him out so Takano can inject him.
Goodbye, Jirou-san. When you wake up, you'll be in the middle of a wonderful nightmare.
As soon as he's out, Takano starts laying down commands. The mountain dogs put Tomitake and his bike in the back of Takano's car, and she tells one of her subordinates, a man named Okonogi, to keep an eye on both Irie and Rika.
Roger, I'll take care of things here. Please be careful on your way.
Hey, so not only might you recognize the name Okonogi, but you very well might recognize the voice actor. Props to Mr. Sir for helping me pull the greatest troll of this video series. Anyway, Takano hits the road and finds a good spot to drop off Tomitake. Of course, it is the spot where the paved road meets gravel, right on the edge of town. This is where his body is found every single chapter. But oddly enough, something is different this time. She can't put the body there, as there's a police cruiser parked nearby, so she's forced to drop his body a little further down the road in a rice field closer to Okinomiya.
Goodbye, Jirou-san. Your mysterious death and my disappearance will complete the 5th year's curse of Oyashiro-sama. You should feel honored. You're going to be a part of history.
In a way, in some sort of bizarre, fucked up, utterly twisted way, this feels like her final act of love to him. Takano is just so fucked. She drives a little longer and parks her car out in the middle of the wilderness. After waiting a while, she sees a signal from another car and signals back. She's greeted by more military men, offered a coffee, and referred to as Major. Of course, her being burned to death has been faked. But there's a small problem. They made a mistake and acquired a body that's been dead for over 24 hours.
but Takano laughs this off.
The messenger of Oyashiro-sama was long dead, but came to the festival regardless. That's a good one.
The mountain dogs tell her that they've burned her body in an oil drum, which makes Takano wonder just how Rika knew. But it doesn't really matter at the moment. The police have found Tomitake's body, and the show is about to begin. Anyway, Oishi does some crime scene investigating and as always calls Irie to the scene. But now we get to watch him panic in real time. It's not great. And of course, the next day at school, Oishi pops in for a little chat.
Interestingly, he always asks to see the most key person in that world. He asks for Keiichi in the world when he gets sick. He asks for Rena in the world where she gets sick. In this world, he asked for me.
Oishi confirms for her that both of them are dead, just as she said they would go. Rika asks if he suspects her.
Well, I wanted to suspect you, but I don't. If you were responsible in some way, you wouldn't have given me the hints you did.
Of course, that doesn't mean that Oishi doesn't think she knows more than she's telling him, so he does a little tit for tat. He lets Rika ask a couple of questions. Obviously, the police cruiser being in place disrupted where his body was found, but it also accomplished something else.
I told the officers in the police cruiser to check every vehicle that passed by. As it turns out, one of the cars that headed towards Okinomiya after the festival was over was Takano's.
She lives in Okinomiya, so that's not necessarily strange. But what is strange is that Tomitake wasn't with her.
I find it hard to believe that Takano would drive back home alone in the dark without her boyfriend. What if she had Tomitake in her trunk and she was planning to dump the body in the woods? But because the cruiser was in the area, she had no choice but to pass by and dump him on the side of the road.
He also brings up the estimated time of death on Takano's body, and this, of course, when taken with everything else, does look awfully suspicious. Oh my god. He's doing it. He's actually doing it. For once, he's putting the pieces together in the right way. Holy shit! This confuses Rika, as for some reason, she never even thought of this possibility. I don't know how, as this was one of my very first thoughts after seeing Tomitake dead, but you know what, Rika is a much better person than I am, so it's fine. Next, Rika goes to the clinic to make sure Irie and the mountain dogs are still going to protect her.
Don't worry, Rika-san. We'll still keep a tight security around you.
He says?
You know, like a liar.
You don't have to call the police.
Okanogi. Come on, man. You're a trained military professional. Don't make it this obvious. Maybe he's just not trying, considering that Rika is a child, and despite being over 100 years old, she still just shrugs and says, okay, I guess I should trust you then. He also tells her to disregard all of Oishi's thoughts because he's just a desperate, senile old man. Rude? Though he does give her that this whole debacle was most likely caused by someone within the organization, because, of course, there's an organization funding this terrible shit. Just then, Irie gets off the phone. It seems that he's in hot water. Tomitake, the harbinger of the budget cuts, is dead, after all, which places suspicion pretty firmly on Irie.
It sounds like there's some big conspiracy behind their deaths. People in Tokyo think that I'm the one who's been pulling the strings. Good grief. I have a lot of questions as to how they figure that.
Yeah, the only strings Irie is capable of pulling are those in a maid apron.
Do you think Takano might be the culprit? She's someone within the organization.
Okay, at least she's not listening to this clearly sinister man entirely. Rika doesn't quite know who to trust, though. She knows she can trust Irie at the very least, but he's just as much in the dark as she is. Should she believe that Takano is the culprit? If so, then that means that the mountain dogs are her enemies, which is not great. But Oishi could just be wrong. Of course, we know he's not, but Rika has no way to tell for sure.
What can I do? How can I change this? Am I supposed to take Hanyu's advice and resign this time?
Meanwhile, back at school, the club is also discussing the murders. 2 days have passed since they occurred, and Rika is running out of time. It's already the 21st of June.
At the earliest, I'll get killed on the night of the 22nd. My classmates just expect that their peaceful days will continue forever, but I couldn't feel that way, as I really don't want to die.
It's tomorrow night. Are you ready, Rika? This life's Watanagashi was the best festival I've ever had. Didn't you feel that way too?
It was fun. It really was fun.
Rika thinks it would be such a shame to leave this world, a world where everyone is finally happy. Hanyu tries to tell her to let it go, that she's like a kid who doesn't want to leave a birthday party.
Hanyu, don't you want to see? what lies beyond June of 1983?
Of course she does. But she's far more concerned about losing Rika for good.
Without you, I'd have to live for such a long time without anyone to talk to. No one will be able to see me. Do you have any idea how miserable and lonely that will be?
Rika wants to make this the final world. If it doesn't work out, she wants to just give up. Hanyu obviously doesn't want that to happen. Rika seems to waver in her resolution, but she doesn't give in entirely. The conflict between these two is a lot of fun, by the way, because they are such good friends, but they have this fundamental wedge between them. Both are little girls, and so both are being just a little bit selfish. Rika is trying to save herself despite the risk that she will leave Hanyu alone forever, and Hanyu doesn't want Rika to take risks at all, even if it means she might be able to see her own future finally. Ultimately, both myself and the game thinks that Hanyu is more wrong, as she represents something akin to not standing up to make your life what you want it to be, and kind of just accepting what happens to you, which is not a very healthy way to go about life, but how they work through this conflict will be a point of contention for the rest of this chapter. Anyway, Rena notices that Rika seems to be feeling down, and Keiichi agrees to go talk to her. She allows Keiichi to read a poem. Even if she says she didn't write it, it's pretty clear that she did. Keiichi thinks the poem is super sad, as it seems the writer is compromising on their happiness. Rika expresses a desire to tell them everything, but is afraid that they'll be killed if she does. This freaks Keiichi out a bit, and he goes back to Rena with the news that someone might be trying to kill Rika.
If she really trusts us, I'm sure she'll talk to us soon. Let's believe everything she tells us if she opens her heart. Okay?
The club agrees. Alright, kids. Here it is. It is now officially June 22nd. A very special day. And also the day Rika is set to die.
Knowing that, I didn't even feel like going to school.
Rika tells Satoko that she's taking the day off today, and of course Satoko expresses her concern, but Rika brushes her off.
I'm very happy right now. I'm happy that I'm back with everyone, and that I'm living with you again. So, if I lose you, I'll be living in a very sad world. Just think about that.
And so she sits in the house alone. She's scared. She desperately wants to fight against her fate. She has the will to do so, but she doesn't know if she even believes she truly can. Rika has never thought about what happens to the world after she dies, if it just continues on without her. Of course, we know that for Hinamizawa, at least, it doesn't. But there's no way she could know that. She's already dead, after all.
After I'm dead, I wonder how Satoko will move on with her life. I'm feeling like this because I don't want to leave this world. This is the world that I've always wanted. They will mourn for me. We worked so hard to make a miracle happen, but they're going to lose their happy world in just one day. After today, Satoko will probably hug my pillow and cry just like this. Is everyone else going to cry for me too? I'm sure they will.
Just then, the phone rings. Rika hopes it's her friends calling to check up on her.
Hello, this is Okanoki Gardeners. Is this the Fudo Day residence? I'm calling because I have something urgent to ask you. I called the school, but they told me you were sick today. Are you feeling alright?
Rika claims it's just a cold. She's increasingly unsure of whether she can trust the mountain dogs, after all. Okanogi tells her that that's actually really fortunate for her to stay home.
We got a tip from Tokyo that someone is planning to murder you. Tokyo was investigating the murder of Tomitake-san and Takano-san. Their investigation concluded that there's a high probability Dr. Irie is pulling the strings.
He goes on to talk about how the budget constraints were what did it, as Irie was apparently embezzling money from the research. And that's what does it, because Rika knows that Irie is not that kind of person. I think we know it too by this point, which means that Okanogi is lying. He's trying to set the good doctor up, but she doesn't say any of this to him.
There are 20 security guards patrolling the Furude Shrine in 3 shifts. You may not notice, but they're there for you.
Of course, this should be a good thing, right? Well, if the mountain dogs are actually the ones that want her dead, then, maybe it's not a great idea to be fucking surrounded by them. It seems that Tokyo, which is exclusively how the characters refer to this secretive organization that Takano and Tomitake are a part of, is breaking up. Something is happening, and there are different factions at play. But where does everybody stand? Rika's just a little kid. It's almost impossible for her to really know. So who can she be sure she can trust? Well, one name comes to mind. Oishi. His only goal here is to solve the murders. and Rika has information he wants. He can be trusted to protect her, so she gives him a call.
Hello, it's Oryou. Sorry for the wait. I was getting ready to leave for Gifu Prefecture. I was going to browbeat them until they owned up to botching the case. My colleagues are convinced that the body is Takano, but I'm still not satisfied.
Rika tells him that someone anonymous called her to let her know she's going to be killed, and Oishi agrees to send some officers over. We cut briefly to Oishi and Kumagai heading out on their investigation, and then to the mountain dogs, who realize that Rika has called the police. 4 plainclothes officers are now guarding her house. Something like this has never happened before. When he's actually on your side, Oishi is the GOAT! This is why we love him! Bah! Rika calls for Hanyu and asks her what she thinks of all of this.
I have to admit, I've never seen anything like this before.
Is it still wrong for me to expect something different this time?
I'm not going to hope for anything.
Hanyu continues to remain a bystander, regardless of what Rika does.
I've been living far longer than you. I know that there are more sad things than happy things in this world, and that your hopes will always be betrayed. That's why I don't want to be hurt anymore.
So you're not expecting anything from this world either? I still have hope that this world might be different, but you think I'll just be killed again? You're the same as Satoko. You're waiting for some stroke of luck or some miracle to come and help you. You're afraid of fighting. You think that being patient is the same as being strong.
Like I said, I love it when the game does my analysis for me.
I can't even touch people or talk to them. You think I'm just like everyone else, even though all I can do is watch. Do you understand how it feels to not be involved in anything?
The girls realize that this is not the time for this argument, and they hastily apologize to each other. But neither really backs down on her opinions, and above all else, the clock is still ticking.
The time of my death is slowly approaching. Will I be able to survive this time? It's been a long time since I faced this fear without drinking wine.
Satoko comes home after school, announcing her presence by screaming at the strange men in her downstairs room. As it turns out, as well, she has not come home alone. The entire club is with her.
Why is that guy guarding your house? What the heck did you do?
Mi-chan, that's not the right question. What happened to you, Rika-chan?
The whole club is worried and came here to see how she was doing. Rika starts laughing and doesn't stop for a solid minute. They demand to know what's going on.
There's nothing to explain. I'm getting murdered today.
Okay, after she messes with them a little, she ultimately decides that it's finally time. It's finally time to tell them everything.
I think I'm being targeted by the person who killed Tomitake and Takano.
She catches them up on everything that both she and we already know, but there's also more.
There's a disease unique to Hinamizawa. I'm not sure what it's officially called, but I've always known it as Hinamizawa syndrome.
It was first noticed in World War II, when soldiers who were from Hinamizawa would get homesick and eventually kill their own comrades and then themselves. Eventually, a certain doctor ended up studying these soldiers and came to the conclusion that it was an externally caused mental disease. And this disease is caused by a pathogen native only to Hinamizawa. So, yeah, Takano's scrapbooks from last chapter, what she actually wrote in those particular volumes was mostly true. And we all thought it was bullshit. Oh my god. Like Takano wrote, a lot of the old, weird customs and rules of Hinamizawa were put in place subconsciously as a way to fight against the disease, and now in the modern day, it's much weaker. The symptoms are triggered primarily by acute stress or leaving Hinamizawa, both of which are pretty easy to keep under control, at least back in the 80s, being in my 20s is suffering. Anyway, eventually the war ended, but this wasn't the end for the doctor's research. A gathering of a few individuals who wanted to be able to stand up to the new American regime grew into a massive organization dedicated to researching methods of defense. Its name? Tokyo. So this entire time, they haven't been referring to the city, but to the organization to which they belong. Obviously, this means that Hinamizawa syndrome was one of the projects chosen to research and potentially weaponize. So they found Irie.
I need to make it clear that Irie isn't some far-right supporter of this secret society. He's just a young, capable doctor and an earnest researcher. He published an innovative thesis, but other academics thought he was too radical. However, that convinced Tokyo that he was the only researcher suitable to study Hinamizawa syndrome.
Get stuck in a local clinic for the rest of your life or have a huge staff and facility to study fun shit? Frankly, that's a pretty easy choice. So where does Takano fit into all of this? Because clearly she's not just an assistant. Turns out that it is Takano, not Irie, who is really a part of Tokyo, and much like Tomitake, is acting as their eyes and ears on the ground. That's why she has command of the Special Ops Forces. The only difference between them is she is here in Hinamizawa, and Tomitake is working on the Tokyo side, coming back to Hinamizawa periodically to deliver Irie's reports back. At first, all was good and the project was trucking along, but then the old guard of Tokyo finally began to die off. A new generation was taking over, one more concerned with creating a better Japan than fighting against America. And so a lot of the old projects have started getting phased out or shut down altogether. The only reason Irie is still able to work is because they've allowed him enough funding to at the very least cure the disease, but all the research done on weaponizing it has been disposed of. Or so it was thought. Okay, but there's one last question. Rika. Why does either Irie or Takano want her dead so badly? Or alternatively, why can she be used as a trump card?
For the demons, the pathogen, to survive, a certain being must be present. That being is the successor of the Furude family line. The truth behind the advent of Oyashiro-sama and the coexistence of humans and demons is that Oyashiro-sama was actually the queen of the village.
Basically, Rika acts as a queen carrier of the disease or something like that, and if she dies, then the entire village might just go fucking insane. Rika emphasizes, though, that this is just a theory. We don't know how true this is in actual practice. Hey, so I want you to think back all the way to chapter 1. I want you to imagine going right from that chapter to this one. What the fuck? And yet the transition was done so well that I bet you spent a bunch of that previous rant going, yes, of course, that makes total sense. I think all my friends are now starting to see why I wanted to cover this game so badly. I wanted you to imagine that above scenario, because that's what all of Rika's friends are experiencing just now.
As I thought, everyone was staring at me with their mouths open in shock. That's only normal. I'm sure I sound like a crazy person.
In order to back up her point, she brings up Satoko's doctor visits and finally explains to her that she is actually sick. Satoko doesn't take this well.
Don't you joke around! I thought we were getting financial support by aiding his research. I don't want to get those shots every day for the rest of my life. Why me, exactly? When did I even become so sick?
And then it seems as if she begins to remember something. Something that she shouldn't. Everyone else there, including us, have no idea what this means, but Rena calms her down anyway before touching Rika's hand as well.
We believe your story, Rika-chan, and you've been carrying such a heavy burden for a long time. I'm proud of you.
The entire club agrees. They ask a few more questions about the disease, and Rika tells them the best way to fight against it.
If you think you might be suspicious of someone, don't be.
Just don't. Oh, you're suspicious of someone? Think they might not have the best of intentions? What are you, stupid? I'm kidding. I cut that line off at a really awkward time. The point actually is an extension of the lesson that these rascally kids have been learning this entire time. To trust in people. To trust in your friends. Every time something went wrong in this tale, it's because someone started to doubt everyone around them. And every time something went right, it's because that trust reemerged. And with that, the club is united. It's time for a battle, and they're all ready for it. Together, they sift through the information that Rika has and come to the conclusion that Takano is a much more likely culprit than Irie. They also agree that Rika should bring Oishi up to speed on everything that's going on, as he's an adult who can probably offer more support than any of the kids can. And speak of the devil, just as they're about to order some dinner and hunker down to wait for Oishi to return, the phone rings.
I finished up everything in Gifu, and I'm heading towards Okino-Miyo right now.
What about Takano's body?
We did it. We were right. Takano and her vehicle are still missing. She may have some information regarding Tomitake's murder, so I've just issued a search warrant for her. I'm heading to your house with Kuma-chan, so please tell us whatever you know. You can talk to me about anything you can think of.
Yes, I'm ready to tell you about everything.
She hangs up the phone, and everyone celebrates. But not all is sunshine and rainbows. We've still got the fucking Debbie Downer in the corner to deal with.
Don't say that you're sure. It would devastate you if nothing ended up changing. I don't want you to die.
You don't want to believe because you don't want to be hurt. That way, you'll never be let down. I'm not going to listen to your opinions anymore. You just stay there and watch like the bystander you are.
Yes, I'm just a bystander, but I'm still rooting for you.
I hate to say it, but in this one case, it might be right to still feel some trepidation. Especially if you know what's coming next. Because now we cut to Oishi and Kumagai on the way back. They've just passed through Okinomiya. They're almost back. As they pass over the site of Tomitake's murder, they discuss just what could have really killed him. Suddenly, shortly after the road turns to gravel, Oishi tells Kumagai to stop the car.
What's wrong?
That car over there. I wonder what it's doing.
Oishi points over to a white van. Oh.
Strange that a van is out here at this hour. I'm surprised you even saw it.
It's like I keep telling you. A detective always has to pay attention to his surroundings.
Oishi calls in security and asks him to scan the license plate. Meanwhile, he and Kumagai go in to investigate. Apparently there's some phone lines near here, so presumably they're working on those, but their van isn't labeled in any way to signify they're from the phone company. Meanwhile, these are absolutely the mountain dogs, and now snipers have their sights trained on the two of them. Also, there are 8 of them?
Hello? Good evening. We're from the police. We were wondering what you guys were doing, since it's pretty strange to see a van parked out here. Who are you guys? You're not from the NTT, are you?
One of the workers explains that they're from Okinogi Electrics. Uh-huh. That's a real company. Oishi seems to agree with me as he immediately asks for the company's address. Of course it doesn't exist, nor does a telephone number.
You forgot the telephone number.
Someone finally finds the phone number, but obviously Oishi is by now very suspicious.
Who are you? If you're really a contractor, you should have proof of that, but you don't have anything. Besides, everything about you seems off.
Listen, Oishi, man, I love your curiosity, but there are snipers trained on you. Oh god, that's right, he's a character in a story, he can't fucking hear us, he doesn't know! Oishi thinks these are a couple of punks he could take in a fight easily. He probably could, if not for the trained snipers! Well, guess what? Kumagai goes back to the car to call this into the station, and they're given permission to fire. Within seconds, Kumagai is dead. Oishi gets a second longer, having been shot in the chest instead of the fucking head.
Sweet dreams, Oishi-san. Too bad. He was getting so close to catching me.
Takano is still in her little operation van and gloating. Also, can I just say, that goddamn that outfit is smoking. I want an outfit like that. Maybe if I give Dragon Gugu eyes, I'll stick it on my model. Someone suggests that they hold off on the operation, that is, the operation to kill Rika Furude, until tomorrow, as the presence of the police suggests a leak. But Takano brushes this off. It's going to happen tonight. Besides, Takano knows it's not a leak.
She's predicting it. She knew that Tomitake was going to die, and she even knew how my body was going to be found. She's the genuine heir to the blood of Oyashiro-sama, her priestess, and the queen positioned at the top of Hinamizawa's supernatural phenomenon. It's impossible to hide things from God. All right, Rika-chan. Let's see which of us deserves to inherit the legend of Oyashiro-sama. Your death will be the final curse of Oyashiro-sama, and it will mark the finale of this legendary village. When that happens, my plan will become the real curse.
I guess she has a reason to gloat, seeing as Oishi is fucking dead. He was kind of Rika's one last hope. Of course, none of the kids know this yet. They're still waiting for him to show up. Mion ordered some noodles for the kids and officers, and everybody is all eating together. The officers are getting worried because they'd like to be relieved, and the kids are worried because it's getting too late to be reasonable. It's nearly 11 now. Just then the phone rings. They answered, hoping that it's Oishi, but it's actually just the police department looking for Oishi. This is not great. At least they go to relieve the officers, and the kids decide that regardless of Oishi's status, they better call it a night here. As soon as the new officers arrive, the other kids all take off.
Am I really going to see them tomorrow? I have no clue.
Just as Satoko is telling her all about all the traps she set up around the house, Hanyu comes back.
What's wrong? Are you hungry? I didn't need anything sweet today. Do you want me to drink some juice?
It's almost time.
And indeed, despite the police downstairs, the mountain dogs are getting ready to start their operation. Of course, what they were doing at the telephone poles was shutting down the lines so Rika can call for help.
Let's begin. Phoenix 1 to all units. Terminate the detectives on the first floor and the one companion on the second. Do not leave any evidence. Do not fire weapons or use any gas. Use your tasers. Remember, they have guns. Do not let them fire.
Come on, don't embarrass me, Okanogi.
On Takano's signal, the mountain dogs burst through the door and the detectives instantly go down. However, Rika and Satoko weren't asleep yet, and they heard the noise. By the time the mountain dogs make it upstairs, they've already gone through the window. When they try to follow, a smoke bomb goes off, temporarily blinding them. Yeah, for the next 2 chapters, there's going to be a lot of special ops agents getting caught off guard by children's tricks. Just go with it. I think it's kind of funny. Ryukishi tries to spin it as I'm taking the threat way too seriously and wasting time by overreacting, which I think he gets away with for the most part.
Who are they? Are they the organization from Tokyo you were talking about?
I think so. Just run. We're dead if they catch us.
So now 2 little girls are running from trained soldiers through the woods at night. I don't think this is going to end well. However, they're going to damn well try. The 2 girls agree to split up and meet at Mion's house where they'll be safe in the bunker. But before they get very far, Rika trips on a root and falls.
Rika!
Get out of here, Satoko! You'll be killed!
But Satoko refuses. One of the men makes it to them and Satoko kicks him in the fucking face and it's pretty cool. But there's 2 more behind him. Now, however, Rika recognizes them as the mountain dogs, and this confirms beyond all shadow of a doubt that Takano is the culprit.
And now that I know that, I can do something about it in the next world. But if I die now, will I lose my memory again?
But if she doesn't do something right now, Satoko is going to die. Yet Rika realizes something. They are only aiming for Satoko. They don't want Rika dead yet. So she steps in front of her friend.
Yeah, I'm so stupid. I know who you are, but I chose not to run. I'm not going to run, even if you're going to kill me now. Someone once told me that fate can be destroyed as easily as a piece of paper. You people are pathetic. That's why you'll never kill me!
Before any of them have a chance to react, one of them goes down. It's Keiichi! Him, Mion, Rena, and Shion are all here! And they kick ass and take the special ops guys down!
Are you guys okay? That was close. You ran so fast it took us a lot of time to catch up.
I'm really glad we stuck around. We were waiting out here in case anything happened.
And as always, the club coming in clutch! Once again, they agree to head to Mion's house, but once again, they are stopped by another white van. There's 6 of them. That's perfect. Let's beat them unconscious and steal their van. And actually, they kind of do. Especially with the help of Shion's stun gun, they absolutely kick ass. It's a pretty triumphant moment. Are these guys actually going to make it?
Hanyu, I know you still can't believe in hope. Just like always. Stay there and see what my stubbornness can do. I'm going to change this fate. I'm going to do it right here. Let me show you what I'm capable of.
All right, everyone, we're gonna finish this right now. Take down whoever's in front of you, then we're gonna grab their car and get out of here.
All right, let's go!
Ah, yes, the chapter wouldn't be complete without a patented Keiichi scream. What's that? No, that's not Dragon sobbing, don't worry about it. But then, suddenly, something happens. Time, stops. Like, it literally stops.
Hanyu, what's this all about?
The time has come.
She points to Keiichi. There's a bullet right in front of his chest. As soon as Hanyu restarts time, Keiichi is going to die. But if they're taking down all 6 guys from the van, then who shot the bullet? As it turns out, there was a 7th person in the van.
That person is someone we all know very well. Yes. It's Takano.
The club all try to come up with solutions to save Keiichi, but there's nothing to be done. None of them can move.
I'm dead the minute time starts moving again. Even if I don't die, I won't be of any help to you guys anymore. So listen, just give up on me.
Hanyu, are you telling me this is my fate? Are you saying that there's no way to overcome this?
It's okay, Rika. You won't remember this.
Mion is crying, but Keiichi tells them that they have to survive for him.
Rika-chan, I'm sorry. I'm the one who told you that we could change destiny. But I'm gonna have to retire now.
The silence suddenly ended, and the clamor of reality returned. An explosive sound then hit Keiichi straight in the chest. I watched Keiichi collapse right in front of me. He fell down on his back while his blood splattered everywhere. And after that, he stopped moving.
Hey guys. I'm getting the most bizarre feeling right now. Do you think maybe this is a metaphor? No. Do you think I'm covering up my feelings of dread and horror with humor? No.
Takano to HQ. I've taken care of it. I need what I told you before. I also need someone to clean up the bodies. Send me 5 bags and some water to clean up the area.
5 bags, huh? 5 bags. Oh, shit. Takano then points her gun directly at Mion's head.
I've always wanted to see the tattoo on your back. I'm going to take a peek at it later.
Sure. Have a look if you want. It's nothing special. Rena tries to do something, but now they're all being restrained by the mountain dogs. Takano explains that Mion has to go first, since she's the leader of the club, and shoots her in the head. She takes a step towards Satoko next, but Shion starts screaming. She's trying to protect Satoko as long as she can. I get it now! You killed Satoshi-kun, didn't you? Isn't that the truth?
Sorry, I don't like giving out secrets, so I'm not telling.
And down goes Shion as well.
Is it that amusing for you to take away innocent lives?
Oh, so you want to die next? You were going to be the last one if you stayed quiet.
Rena is the smartest of the kids, as we know, and manages to get Takano talking a little, by asking if she thinks she speaks for Oyashiro-sama. But no, she's no proxy.
Soon enough, Oyashiro-sama's wrath is going to destroy the whole village. But I'm the one who's going to make that happen. Yes, I'm going to become Oyashiro-sama. I'm going to become something more than human.
But Rena starts laughing. Takano asks her what's so funny.
Oyashiro-sama is already here.
And those are her last words before she's dead as well. Takano then finally turns to Satoko and gives her a choice. Die now, or get taken into Tokyo as a research subject. Satoko refuses.
Let's do a quiz then. Broccoli or cauliflower? Which one is green?
It's No, it's broccoli.
And now she's dead too.
This really is such a lovely and beautiful night. Don't you agree?
So, you're going to kill me too?
Yes, I will kill you. The corpse of the Queen Carrier is the key to this mission. You're going to become an ugly political tool far away in Tokyo. And then, the legend of Onikafuchi will finally come to an end.
It is at that moment that Rika realizes how she's going to do it. She's going to recreate the Watanagashi with Rika's own body. In one act of mercy, she will drug Rika to do it. But Rika stops them. She refuses to be drugged.
The picture of you cutting open my stomach will be forever burned into my soul. I'm not going to forget that. Next time I see you, I'll remember that you did this to me.
And so, Takano grants her wish. The mountain dogs shove a gag in her mouth and bind all of her extremities together, then shove her in the back of the van. She can't move, can't speak, can't do anything. It's over.
Again! It didn't work! Again.
Hanyu is no longer acting as a bystander. She's been trying so hard not to get hurt. But in this moment, we see that for just a little while, she really did hope that Rika could do it.
It's okay, Hanyu. We worked very hard. We were getting so close to changing our fate for real. It still didn't work out. But, for some reason, I feel satisfied.
Even if she didn't win this time, this timeline taught her just how possible it is to win. So she's going to do her best to remember Takano's face. And even if she doesn't, Hanyu promises to remind her.
I also want to have a happy future with everyone.
The van stops in front of the shrine. Many tools are laid out on the ground, ready for Takano to use. They strip Rika naked, but leave the gag in place and her wrists tied.
Don't forget this humiliation. The pain I'm about to experience should be carved into my soul forever. Hanyu, don't look away. You have to watch. Remember this forever.
She's frustrated, but that's all she can do. Rika doesn't describe what happens to her, which honestly makes it so much more horrifying. She just describes how painful it is, and how cold she's becoming. But it's not just Hanyu who is beside her now. It's everybody.
That's why it wasn't painful. We didn't overcome this fate, but I have no regrets.
Keiichi disagrees. He thinks they still could have tried harder.
But all of you worked so hard together. I was watching. I saw the whole thing.
But it wasn't enough. If we'd had a will strong enough to overcome this fate, we should have created a miracle.
That's right! A miracle will happen if everyone believes in it!
Satoko, Rika-chama, and everyone else worked so hard.
I'm sorry, Rika. You were brave enough to ask us for help, but I couldn't save you.
They all cry together. But then Rena interrupts, claiming she knows why a miracle didn't occur this time around. It's because not everyone believed in it. The others are confused, but then Rena turns to Hanyu.
Hey! You! Did you believe? Did you believe that we could overcome this fate?
Would something really have changed if I believed? All I can do is watch and accept.
We don't even know your name. But you still needed to be brave enough to fight this fear and pain.
Don't you realize that I can't even touch people? Don't you realize that I can't even speak to them? You still think I can make a miracle happen just by believing in something?
And then Rena confesses that she's always known Hanyu was there. She always knew that Hanyu was having fun hanging out with the club. Hanyu is afraid that they'll all think she's a monster, but the club agrees to accept her. Rika, by now, is dead. Together, the club is leaving this world and heading off towards the next. Rika takes Hanyu's hand.
Let's go, Hanyu. Let's accept this sorrow, so we can embrace joy as well. Believe in the bright future that's waiting for us. The miracle will happen. We will obtain it. Okay?
Yes!
After this, we get an epilogue that explains the emergency protocols in place in case Rika dies. In order to prevent all of the villagers from going insane and killing each other, the order is sent out that they all be rounded up, brought to the classroom in the school building, and gassed to death. We saw the aftermath of this event all the way back at the end of Chapter 3. Takano gloats about her victory, once again calling herself a god. And that's how the chapter ends. Chapter 7 is weird for me to talk about. You might have been able to tell a little bit, but it's actually one of my least favorite chapters. I try to keep it kind of on the down low because it's more about personal preference than anything objective, I could say. Chapter 7 is admittedly in a very awkward place. It has to wrap up a lot of plot points that didn't get covered in chapters 5 and 6, resolve Satoko's entire character arc while simultaneously pushing Rika through the entirety of her own, all while deciding to go for a lighter tone for most of the arc, only getting back into the horror vibe at the very, very end. One thing you may still have questions about is Takano. She makes for a very satisfying villain, but in this chapter at least, her motivations are very vague. She doesn't really seem like the kind of person with an ego big enough to simply desire to become God, does she? I avoided talking about her a lot this chapter because, like all things, this too will eventually fall into place. But still, when this chapter is great, it is great. It's a really hard thing to build up a mystery as much as this work and actually have the payoff be satisfying. And I think it is. This is the chapter where we finally get a lot of those answers, at least as far as Rika is concerned. And that ending makes me bawl my eyes out every time I read it, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. There's still a lot of secrets to be uncovered, but never fear, Chapter 8 is kind of a lot. Yeah, it's gonna take 6 months for that video to come out, so everybody, get some good sleep tonight. Special thanks goes out to my priests of the hog and my elder hog prophets, Adra, Chronoton, Eshok7, Grayman, Jonathan Hummel, Casey N. Moore, Ventus Agri, and Xavier Pena.